Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening.
Oh, go ahead, Mrs. Neary.
All right, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to go ahead and read the public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the board secretary in the following manner. A, posting written notice on the official school bulletin board at the administration building on August 5th, 2020. B, transmitted notice to the Courier Post and Philadelphia Inquirer on August 5th, 2020. C, transmitted notice to the clerk of Cherry Hill Township on August 5th, 2020. And I would like everyone now to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Sugars for roll call.
Mrs. Arroyo?
Here.
Ms. Friedel?
Here.
Mr. Goodwin?
Here.
Mrs. Matlack?
Here.
Mrs. Neary?
Here.
Mr. Avadia?
Here.
Mrs. Schultz?
Here.
Mrs. Tong?
Here.
Mrs. Seidel?
Okay, great, thank you. Do we have any student reports this evening, Dr. Malash?
We don't, Mrs. Neary, not tonight.
Okay, great, thank you. And I believe we have someone presenting this evening, Dr. Malash, so I'll turn it over to you.
We do, thank you, Mrs. Neary. So I'm very excited. I'm going to be calling in Mrs. Judy Wilson. Many of you will remember worked with us on the ad hoc committee in the spring of 2019. She also helped to lead the process when we went through the strategic planning process beginning last summer. It took us through last spring. Since we've been talking about board goals, I asked Mrs. Wilson to join us for a little bit again this evening to talk about the goals process, but I'm going to call her into the meeting. Hi, Judy. It's Joe Malash. How are you?
I am well, Joe. How are you and your team members?
Everybody is well. We have you on speakerphone, so we need you to use your teacher voice so we can make sure you're broadcasting into the screen so that folks can hear what you're talking about. So thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, and I signed in a couple times, but that didn't cooperate this evening. So good evening, everyone. And I am glad to be with you. I'm sorry I'm not sick that I can't see you, but I appreciate all the hard work everyone has been doing, especially under the circumstances of these last months. I shared with Joe an overview last week, which I know he shared with board members, about where districts are very typically as they reach this point post strategic goal determination and ready for action. And so I hope all of you, at least most of you, got a chance to read that page overview, but I would like to highlight it and then to take questions and to help you think about where you are here in August 2020 as you act upon the strategic goals and work feverishly to attain focus. So just a quick overview, past months, the last 12 to 15 months, the board originally chose a very inclusive process for two reasons. The first was every great organization needs focus, and that focus has to be sustained in order to see progress. Factual, research-based, lots of depth behind that research and experience for schools, nonprofits, for-profit, corporate world, doesn't matter, families. The second reason your board went in this direction with a very, very inclusive process was to hear the many, many voices, opinions, and recommendations from expertise and from constituents, grades 4, 5, and up in a student base, all of your parents, all of your employees. As we surveyed thousands of people, had focus groups, and then very formal forums. All of that led us to January. And January feels like years ago, but indeed, it was only the beginning of 2020 when key leaders from all of your constituent groups, including board members, met for 2 days to determine which would be the high leverage, high impact, most important goals that the district could cling to for 3 to 5 years in order to show deep progress for its pupils. Those goals, as you know, now looking back, were especially precious. As we think about where we are today, what has changed in the world since January, I believe these goals are more meaningful and more important than ever before. But indeed, they rose to the top in January. Student wellness through social and emotional learning, purpose and passion through student-centered learning, giving children of all ages more voice and choice in their learning, and connecting beyond the classroom so children would see that their learning enabled and empowered them to make an impression and an impact both in their own lives and beyond the classroom walls. Those goals resonated across surveys, across age groups, constituent groups, and indeed were adopted by the board. So now here we are, and I just want to say that these goals cut through whatever kind of schedule or schedules the 2021 school year holds, hybrid, in-person, remote. They cut through still all of your age levels, pre-K through 12. And if you are able to be clear enough and strong enough as a board to hold them in focus for the next 3 to 5 years, you will indeed see the progress and the success that they hold for your children. So here are my warnings, right? My yellow flags of caution. One of the reasons this process is important for school districts especially is that we fall into traps. We fall into the, it's September, it's a new year, there must be new goals. With people saying, what happened to last year's goals? Were they measurable? Did they matter? Did we celebrate them? Did we need more time with them? We have fallen into those traps again and again and again. And so the purpose of these strategic goals is to help you as a district, and I want to use the word system here very specifically, as a system, to think systemically, K-12, long-term, to help you rise above these traps, to not fall into the, it's September, faculty, students, parents, here are new goals. Because what you get is an eye roll. You get a, here we go again. I think we had goals last year, no one can name them. You know, there wasn't enough invested in them for them to become real and meaningful. You want this to be, everyone in the district knows these 3 goals. Everyone can speak to them over the next 3 to 5 years. Everyone can grab on to what their role is to have forward motion with these goals. And that's the purpose. That's why you entered into this process to begin with. So I'm encouraging you to use these goals truly as your roadmap, to not pile on, not end up with more than 3 important buckets of work, to see all of your decisions through the lenses of these goals. Because that indeed is the way you will see progress, and you will see a system have some glue in its work. If you ricochet, if you adopt more goals, if you say, well, they're strategic goals, but let's call other goals something else, core level goals, target level goals, this is really what everyone's work should be attached to.
Marley.
The goals, the individual goals, etc., all the way through for the foreseeable future. So I'm urging you to take half a step back, to realize that you've done a beautiful job in terms of your role of governance in setting a process in motion, supporting that process with resources and energy, adopting the goals, and that is your governing board's responsibility. And now it's the responsibility of your leadership team, your admin, and your faculty and support staff to execute the action plans attached to each goal. And that's what you can measure. There's a measure set in place, the feedback loop you'll set in place. And if you are clear-minded enough to stick to it, it will matter greatly for your students. So that's the overview and my encouragement to remember why you entered into this process, to remember the work and the commitment that was made to the goals, and to hold true to them. And I wish I could see you, but I'm open to all comments and questions, of course.
Thank you, Judy. Folks, if you have questions, Mrs. Mayor, I don't know whether you want to run it through with questions for folks.
Yeah, I'll send it around to each member of the board. I'll start, well, I can see on the screen, so I'll start with Mrs. Matlack. Did you have any questions?
Hi, yes, I do. Thank you, Judy, very much. It is good to, keep this, clear and strong overhead view. And like you said, sometimes we can get bogged down in everything else. And I guess my question is, how do we balance that? I mean, we have so many areas that we feel need our attention, like the achievement gap, for example. How do we balance those against these broader strategic goals that we have set for ourselves when we are looking year to year?
Yes, so it's always a challenge because there are always so many buckets of work. But I want to emphasize that the gaps you see in achievement, the importance of inclusion and cultural proficiency, those pieces are the umbrella of these 3 goals. There's a preamble to your goals, and it is very specific about academic excellence, inclusion, voice, and cultural proficiency. Cherry Hill has done beautiful work in those areas, must continue to do work in those areas, but through these 3 goals, right? That achievement gap will indeed narrow if we're working on social emotional learning, purpose and passion, and connecting kids with meaningful work beyond the classroom. That does not put those pieces aside, but something has to rise to the top that will impact every child in meaningful ways. And these goals are designed for every child. Does it look the same for every child? No. But does every child fall under this set of goals? Absolutely. So this doesn't by any means exclude the importance of academic excellence. That's part of this. It doesn't exclude your eye on disaggregating data. You must always disaggregate data. But the question of academic gaps and achievement gaps was very much alive in determining these three goals.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Arroyo, did you have any questions?
Just to follow up with Carol's, so whenever we're having a conversation around like a policy or anything, or any other thing that's at the table, it's best to look at it through the lens of purpose and passion, or connecting beyond the classroom, right? Like making sure yeah. So okay, that's it. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Yeah. So, using this lens, using these three goals as your lens to determine what needs to be done. From this work, there might be policy work, right? From the work of these three goals, there might be budget work. So let's use budget as an easy example. When you, in February, begin your budget review again, you want to know, does that budget tell the story of supporting these three goals? Okay, so look at everything through the lens of this work.
Thank you, Mr. Arroyo.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwin, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I like what you're saying, Mrs. Wilson. One of the questions I have, or actually maybe a question more for the board, now that I look at the goal, I really feel that what we have laid out is really good, but at the same time, I also feel like cultural proficiency, I don't really know what that is. Like I really believe, before I guess it was acceptable, but I think in light of just more information, I believe it should be more anti-racism than cultural proficiency, because I think that encapsulates both of those items. So I would say, yeah, that's great that what we have is great, but I believe I would move to have that somewhat strengthened from just cultural proficiency to actually say anti-racism. And then I think that would carry us through all the goals and everything, at least in that umbrella piece. That's my thoughts there.
So Dr. Goodwin, I really understand the power of the language and what you're referring to absolutely makes sense to all of us. The conversation at the time was cultural proficiency certainly stronger than cultural competency, right? That we want people to adopt a mindset and a worldview that we're proud of, promotes every student. And, if we're educators, we need to be operating with a mindset that is both culturally proficient and anti-racist, right? And so if it's important for the board to break that out, to be specific, I can understand that discussion. I have to say, in my thinking, the anti-racist piece is cultural proficiency. But, again, it make it more, to make it stronger, if that strengthens it, then absolutely that's the language we use as educators with cultural proficiency. And could easily be inserted into that preamble.
I agree there.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Obadia, did you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Sneary. So couple things. One, I think something I actually don't know, to Mr. Goodwin's point. I mean, I also like Mrs. Wilson look at, and I guess what would help me on the board side is we're definitely looking at trainings. We're definitely looking at bringing more of this into the full board, as I believe our Cultural Proficiency Committee asked us to do in January. So we're still along that path, but I think sometimes some of this nomenclature would be helpful. There's anti-racism. This is definitely a way we need to proceed. And I think we need to be methodical about it. But in terms of including cultural proficiency in the preamble, I think that was sensible at that time. Once we're kind of into those trainings that we're mandating potentially for ourselves, once we have a better idea of kind of like how we interact on that cultural proficiency macro level and anti-racist macro level as a board, I think we could look at that again. I would say that, Mrs. Wilson, I do like what Haverford had as the display to make it powerful and visual, with these three broken out in a very, I'm going to say, visual and graphic way. You know, it's very easy to have a shared understanding of what we're talking about when it's one thing of three concentric circles. I also, though, and I know there's a lot of work going on in the three committees that have formed on the administration side in terms of that Lower Merion model full brochure. And I think we need both of those to really continue along this path with a shared understanding. I think, graphics in some cases really just does tell your story. And what I like about the Lower Merion model is just really like, what does it mean, right? Because, how do we look at it? How do we wrestle with it? How do we know how far we're going or what the directions are? So I really like both of those, and thank you for kind of sending those through. The other thing I would say is we're in a place of board goals where it's kind of like, is it possible for you to share, given our three big bullet points, given that very strong preamble, what a year 1 or 2 annual goals kind of might look like to sort of inform our discussion? So that would be my only ask, if that's possible. But I think, when you try to recreate the strategic wheel, in some senses, you want to, this is 5-year goals, but surely there's a 1-year kind of place where we could feel good about having moved forward a full year. So that's the only thing, but I really appreciate the work. I love that process. If you ever want to do it again, I'm in again. So thank you very much for your work on this.
Well, thanks for being such a good part of it too, Ben. But I do want to say that you had very strong leaders, co-chairs, and volunteer committee members who have worked on action plans since March. And it got hard because they started in person and they went to remote meetings. But your 3 co-chairs have action plans well drafted for the first 18 months of work. So when you want to say, what are we measuring by June, you can look at those action plans for that answer.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thanks.
And then Mr. Avati, this is just we've done a couple of different drafts. Barbara Wilson, our Mrs. Wilson, our full-time Mrs. Wilson, as opposed to Judy Wilson, who's our consultant Mrs. Wilson, has been working on drafts of the concentric circles, the Venn diagram-ish type piece. So this is just one we started to look at after what we shared with the Haverford model.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you.
That's a lot. I can send you a couple other examples also, Dr. Wash, in the next days.
That sounds great. Thanks, Judy.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go ahead and ask a few questions and then I'll hand it over to the next board member. Mrs. Wilson, when we looked at the strategic vision back in January, I believe, and we were there, we were looking at it, and my understanding was this is the compass that guides us on everything. And I want to make sure I'm still grounded in that understanding, and that we don't want to lose sight of some of the goals, which, to your point, we don't want to change necessarily year over year, because again, how can you measure that change if you're constantly making change? So for me, I want to ensure that, yes, while this is the compass, these 3 pillars are our guiding compass of, goals like monitoring, understanding and closing that achievement gap. And thinking about communication, which I think connecting beyond the classroom, a board goal around the engagement and communication with the community that is beyond the boardroom, right? And what does that look like? Things like that. So I just want to make sure I'm still understanding that this is kind of our guiding compass, and that those should fit under that framework. So just that would be my only question, that I'm still understanding that correctly.
This is very much your compass. It is your roadmap, and you don't want to take a lot of sidewalks here. You don't want a lot of bird walks. You don't want to take a lot of alternate routes. You want to really try to be very true to this. And it is the only way. When you think about setting a goal in September and pretending that the work gets done through June, first of all, it doesn't, right? By the time the school year starts, even in a, quote, normal year, by the time it starts and May 1st comes, you have really very few months of work to attend to a goal. This has to be, and it has to be through summer work, and it has to be through co-curricular, and it has to continue in order to be meaningful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary.
Ms. Friedel, did you have any questions?
You're on mute.
Maybe muted, Mrs. Friedel.
I did mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully this will work. I had to call in because I'm having audio issues, but you can't hear me from my phone.
No, it's working. We can see and hear you.
And I can't hear you. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. Okay. I had a hard time with the audio, so I do apologize. Dr. Wilson, though, thank you so much for your presentation. I do think it's a good idea to look at long-term goals as opposed to potentially starting new goals every year when you haven't really evaluated where you are in the prior year goal. So I do appreciate you raising that. And I don't really have any questions at this point. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Friedel.
Okay. Mrs. Tong, did you have any questions?
No, I do not have any questions, Laurie. But thank you for the Dr. Wilson, for giving the presentation.
Okay,
It's a pleasure to serve Cherry Hill in any way we can.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Okay, Dr. Malash, I believe that's it, unless any other board member had a follow-up question. Oh, Mrs. Arroyo? Oh, and Ruth, I'm sorry, because she's sitting right there, and I'm looking at everybody's picture. I'm sorry, Mrs. Schultz, go ahead.
That's okay. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. I appreciate it. I guess I just had one question, and I apologize if this was talked about at the meeting because I was unable to attend last week when you discussed goals, but I really appreciate, Ms. Wilson, the concept. It's really parallel to how we set goals at my work. We refer to it as lead and lag measures, but where you set the strategic vision, and then you make sure that you set your proper lead and lag measures around your goal. And I really understand the concept of what you're saying. If our goal is to close the achievement gap, then we create lead and lag measures to make sure that we're doing all of the appropriate things. And then naturally, you'll close the achievement gap. For me, the one thing is just making sure that when we're kind of looking at our strategic vision in those three buckets, that we are identifying the way that we're going to measure it. That's just the one thing. Because for us, when we kind of create we have a 5-year strategic vision plan, and then every department has to create their, how you're going to get there type, and then we measure against those lead and lag measures. So that for me would be really, really important, because if you measure against your lead and lag measures, then to your point, by default, you close the achievement gap. So you don't necessarily have to measure the achievement gap, but you measure the steps to get there, if that makes sense.
Yes, and thank you for that specificity. That measurement and those key indicator or in your action plans for the first 18 months.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you,
Okay,
Schultz.
thank you. Mr. Rorio, did you have another follow-up question?
Well, yeah, just is it possible, because, you know, where we were in January, and, you know, obviously it's going to be every year, where we were last year, but our community, the climate, everything has changed. I think Eric has a really, really good point to really bring in cultural proficiency and cultural competency and anti-racism are three very distinct different topics, and around the conversation on race and equity and like inclusion. So could we bring that to the forefront of this? Because, you know, Eric brought it up, and I feel now I'm like, I can't believe I didn't see that. You're so right. I think if it's a possibility to bring that in, especially if the district is moving in, having all these curriculums addressed and added to our school district, and additional task forces, and the anti-racism policy, and all these awesome things that should be at the forefront, leading that conversation and everything we do in our community. So Eric, thank you for bringing it up, because I think that's definitely something we need to put in there or add to.
Agreed. And Cultural Proficiency Committee, I think it would be good to have them present soon. I know they have in the past, but I think now is a good time to understand, you know, to Eric's point, what does that mean? What is their work? Let everybody like see and understand, because I haven't seen them present yet. So I think it would be really beneficial. So I think this is a good time, dovetailing this conversation.
Yes, and you'll be glad to know, so the Cultural Proficiency, Equity, and Character Ed Committee have added an additional goal to their work as part of the 5-year plan. Their first goal now, the primary first goal, is on anti-racism. And I appreciate, again, you all being so involved in listening and giving the perspective. I think the anti-racism work that's being done, whether it's through P&L with the development of a policy for the district, or work across the district. There's the discussions in C&I about the Social Justice Curriculum Review Committee, the discussion that's going on about the African American History course. I think that those are all very important action steps. I don't know yet that I would say that we should put anti-racism as one of the strong foundations of our district. I don't know that we are there yet to claim that it's a foundation of where we are. I think it's an aspiration. I think it's a process that we are engaging in. I think it's a great discussion for us to continue and to start to hit some markers of this is what we're doing, this is where we are. But I don't know, I would say the cultural proficiency and the cultural proficiency work absolutely is a foundation that we are building on. I wouldn't say yet that anti-racism is a foundational piece. The aspiration would be to get there as we go through. Absolutely part of the action steps that we're going to need to include, and looking at, you could probably identify under at least 2, if not 3 of the goal statements about where the anti-racism work would occur. And measuring it's going to look differently.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I support that statement very much, Dr. Malash, and I also think that probably you're already working on this through your equity committee, but a brief glossary of agreed upon terms and understanding would be really important for the whole community.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Dr. Malash, but I would like to at least have it out there to really think about it as a board and really consider just adding that piece in there, because I believe, as just the idea that we're embracing anti-racism as a district, I think really lends itself to saying that we're focused on making sure everyone is included. We're focused on making sure we're addressing the needs for all of our community, and there's no. So I think it just makes it much more powerful statement personally. I don't know that we have to decide on that today, but I definitely think as we move forward with our goals, if we're going to have this as our overarching goal for the next 5 years, I don't want that to ever be lost sight of, and I want that to be at the forefront of whatever we're thinking for the next 5 years. And that's why I would like to see that in there as one of the umbrella pieces for what we're looking for as a district.
Right, and I appreciate that, Eric, and I do think we need to keep talking about it because I agree, it's got to be at the forefront, that it's got to be part of the discussion. It has to be part of where we are. I don't want us as a district to make a claim right now that it's a foundation of what we are doing or what we have done, built on a history of what we have done, because I don't think that would be an authentic claim right now. I think that we want to get to that point, but I agree with you wholeheartedly, and with the work that we've been engaged in, it has to remain a primary focus and has to be in the forefront of what we are doing. But yeah, we absolutely will continue to talk about it.
Lori, just to clarify, are we talking about adding that as a fourth pillar or just layering that throughout the underlying three pillars of student wellness, purpose and passion, and connecting beyond our classrooms? I just wanted to clarify.
Every pillar.
Yeah. Like
I was
with the
thinking that's the
curriculum.
umbrella piece, that overarching at the very beginning where it says cultural proficiency, including it there as opposed to adding another pillar.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
I'm confused. This is where we want to be too, right? Like where we can get to, or is this where we are now?
It's where we want to be, as the way I understood
Want
it.
to be in a district that has anti-racism as part of their overarching goals. Like I must, you know what I mean? Like,
So
again, to continue to have conversation, but like.
So for me, there are kind of two pieces to it. One's like where we've been and what we can kind of build on, and so that's like backward looking, current, and then the three pieces to me are somewhere we wanted to go. Like that was the vision building
Right.
on the first. So I kind of, I mean, for me, I definitely see anti-racism work in the three for sure. It could be a fourth. I would kind of struggle for it to be a foundation because I think we need to highlight it for attention because it's not foundational. Like if it were foundational, we could train others essentially. I don't see that as the place we're at right now.
I think that makes sense. Ben,
I
agree.
I agree when you read the sentence, building our strong foundations of, we're working to make that a foundation, but it is not one yet.
Yeah.
So wait, in saying that, can we say we're truly, this is why Eric's point about what does it mean to be culturally proficient? Because can you say you're truly culturally proficient as a foundation or even culturally competent as a foundation if we still have a lot to do to get to being truly anti-racist, right? Unless I'm thinking about it.
I
think go back to some of the things that Judy just talked about. I think there are really good discussions for us to have in committee and for us to have with the board and have the Cultural Proficiency, Equity, and Character Education Committee, have those folks come and present, which we will schedule them to do. I don't know that our work right now, I don't know that we want to negate the work of the committees that built these three goals. And again, and some of you participated in that discussion, with defining the language was incredibly important. Each word that was used, I don't know that the board wants to right now change that language. I think that we want to talk more about what are those measures, what is it that you want to see as the action steps that fall beneath them so that we can develop those and publish those and say, here's how we are going to measure purpose and passion, developing highly engaging learner-centered experiences within an environment that promotes voice, choice, and a passion for learning. How are we going to measure that? I don't know that we necessarily want to take away, add to, or change these goals. Remember, the board adopted these in February to guide us for the next 5 years.
Lori, if I may add something?
Sure.
Dr. Malash, when the Cultural Proficiency Committee does present to us, perhaps it would be a good idea to have the consultant to the committee, Dr. Barbara Moore-Williams, come in as well, because she has a broader perspective of districts doing this work and where we are as a district in this work. Our focus is on our district. She works with many districts, and I think she could give us a valuable perspective on where we've been, how we're getting there, and where we are right now, along with where we are in the work with other districts, because just some of the things that she has said, to the committee, that we are, we have much work to do, but we've already done a great deal of work. So, just that I'm not sure one negates the other in terms of being a foundational piece, but I think her perspective might be valuable to help us understand that.
Yes, I will. When I speak with there are 3 co-chairs, Dr. Chapman, Mr. Guy, and Mrs. Tiernan are the 3 co-chairs of the committee, and Ms. Matlack, you sit as liaison from the board, but I certainly will speak with them. I met with the 3 co-chairs and Dr. Moore Williams, I guess 2 weeks ago, as we talked about professional development and the plans and what is going on this year. Those of you who are involved with C&I, you heard Dr. Mahan, our director of curriculum, talk about the work that we're doing with Dr. Goldie Mohammed, who's going to be working with our administrative team and our social justice curriculum review committee. Yes, I think it's incredibly important for representatives of the group to come and present to the board, to share what's going on. There is, in fact, if you go onto our website, let me just show. You go on, I'll be right there. If you go onto the district website, there's an entire section on cultural proficiency, equity, and character education. Goes through and talks about the 5-year plan that our district exists, that our district has. The district has actually presented, at the Camden County roundtables, presented the rest of the superintendents. Mr. Guy has presented extensively across New Jersey, does presentations for New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association, but it goes through, shows the 5-year working document, brochure of information, some additional resources that are available, and some examples, which I think would be incredibly valuable to have the committee come and present, and we'll get them scheduled to do so.
Okay, great, thank you. Dr. Malash, I guess I'll turn it over to you if we have nothing else from any of the other board members on the presentation. We can then move into administrative reports.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Neary, and Mrs. Wilson. Judy, thank you so much for spending 45 minutes with us.
You're very welcome. You're all doing critically important work, and I'm appreciative.
Thank you for your time, and we will talk to you soon, and we'll look forward to seeing you back.
Okay, be well, everyone.
Bye, bye, Judy.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Neary, there are no additional administrative reports to make.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and move to correspondence to see if there's any correspondence from the other board members, and I'll just go kind of around the virtual table. And I'm just going as I see everyone. So I'll start with Mrs. Matlack. Do you have any correspondence?
No correspondence, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Arroyo?
No, thank you.
Ms. Friedel?
None for me, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Ovadia?
Yes, I have two quick items for correspondence. The first is that the Camden County Educational Services Commission resumed its meeting schedule as of August 5th. And a couple things I've reported before, just some updates. So the digital divide, where they're a provider for the state of New Jersey, is up and running. And this is about getting internet access to folks who don't have it in a packaged, inexpensive way. So that's up and running. The esports regional piece that they're looking to put together, the RFP has been awarded. They're meeting with the vendors to make that a reality. They'd like to launch that September 1st. So this would be a regional competitive group doing esports. And as I mentioned when I reported on this the last time, there are more kids playing esports than all other sports combined in the state of New Jersey, perhaps the nation, perhaps the world. I don't have any reference for that statistic, but I'm sure it's true. They're also working on a mental health piece that's also out. And so this is being communicated from their admin section to ours, but just to be aware. And the second brief thing is New Jersey school boards did a brief workshop on Title IX the other day, which I listened to a day after it was, but essentially it was August 5th. Title IX, for people who are people who are trying to learn like me, discrimination on the basis of sex. And just what was interesting for me is that there were new federal regulations put out in May of this year. Those go into effect this Friday, and they feel that there are likely policy implications. But to give you an idea, even though this training happened on the 5th and 9 days to the regulations, they were still working on the New Jersey School Board's recommendations for policies. So very much a living, breathing thing. But Title IX's obviously been around for a good long time, but it's somewhat new. So there may be implications for that more as time progresses. And that's all for me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Goodwin, did you have any correspondence?
No, none for me. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Tong, did you have any correspondence?
No, Lori, no, I do not have any. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Schultz, did you have any correspondence?
None, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Malash, I believe now we move into the committee reports from our work sessions, our committee meetings last week.
You are correct.
Okay, great.
Go through. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And we'll start with CNI and the chair, Mrs. Matlack, if you wanted to go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Neary. We met on August 3rd at 6 o'clock, and we just had a few items on our agenda. We started off with African American Studies, the Social Justice High School graduation requirement. We talked about several things. One of the questions we had immediately was how many credits are needed to graduate and how many of those credits are required by the state. 120 credits are needed to graduate. 72.5 credits are mandated by the state. So there is leeway for the students to take electives, things like that. So there's the talk of the high school African American Studies course. Possibly a freshman or a senior class is being discussed, and none of this will supersede the Amistad curriculum that is mandated and in place here in Cherry Hill. We also talked about the Social Justice Committee and the work that is being done throughout our curriculum and throughout our district. They had 45 to 50 applicants to be on the Social Justice Committee. This is staff members to be on that committee. And Dr. Mahan talked about the fact that we cannot do this work alone, and meaning that we need to look to outside experts to help us guide this work. One of them, as Dr. Malash has already mentioned, Dr. Goldie Muhammad will be at the administrators retreat, doing a keynote with them and some professional development with them. She has a book, Cultural Genius, that they will be discussing, and also talked about the 2 courses that they will be having with her. As part of that, as Dr. Mahan said, we cannot do this alone work, is a partnership with Penn, looking to that for their Social Justice Research Academy. Dr. Hansen is their contact, and a high school summer course is being looked at. I believe that's for the staff, but I would have to have Dr. Mahan confirm that for me. And the other piece that we cannot do this alone, and somebody else that the district is looking for to partner with this work is a Dr. James O'Brien from Columbia. That would also be a summer course, Law as a Tool for Social Justice. So Dr. Mahan was very excited at our committee meeting and infused that excitement among the board members at that committee meeting as well. So much so that some of us ordered those books before the committee meeting was even over. So, you know, we are looking forward to hearing what that work is, how it fleshes out, and, you know, how we continue that work. The next one we talked about was the Cherry Hill, our co-teaching initiative. And Mrs. Wethington introduced Mrs. Mary Ann Josephson, who shared her report on co-teaching professional development that she has facilitated in the district. In our district, we have 5 elementary schools, K-5, who do full co-teaching experience: Cooper, Woodcrest, Kingston, Knight, and Stockton. And Mrs. Josephson talked about the fact that most schools across the country do co-teaching in a supportive role, which is the easiest way to co-teach, one teacher supporting the other teacher, both working in a classroom. And she had great graphics to show us, you know, for that. She said, looking at Cherry Hill and evaluating our co-teaching program, that our teachers were at the top end of that spectrum and have gone beyond that and are at the top end, the reflective part of the process. She said teachers who have time to think about how they do it well. And she said Cherry Hill is doing it well. That was so amazing to hear, and so gratifying to hear. And then she talks some more about the teachers, how our teachers are involved in a reflective practice, which just enhances the work that they do. So perhaps if anybody's interested, that graphic could be shared. If it wasn't shared, I'm not sure. I've seen it, so I'm not quite sure if I saw it through the committee or if I saw it through something that was shared with the whole board. But perhaps
we can share it out with the board this weekend, Mrs. Matlack.
Excellent, thank you. I couldn't remember which side I saw it on. And then we talked about, let me find my place, Rowan College at Burlington County. The Memorandum of Understanding for dual credit is something that we approve annually to allow for dual credit opportunities for our high school students. We also talked about the Digital Divide Grant. Dr. Mahan shared that the Digital Divide Grant from the New Jersey Department of Education that's being completed by Dr. Mahan and Mr. Mark Pilvinsky, Assistant Director of Technology. We hope to hear that we're eligible for additional funding from the state to support the technology, but they need an approval, a resolution of approval in order to apply for the grant. So that is on our agenda tonight. We are approving the application to apply for this grant is what is on our agenda tonight. That is all we had. If any board members have any questions, or if any of the committee members, CNI committee members, have anything to add, Mrs. Neary, I'll let you take over from here to facilitate that.
Thank you, and now I have nothing to add. That was an excellent readout. Thank you, Mrs. Matlack. I'll go around the room for any questions. Ms. Sororio?
I just want to point out that Eric did buy the book right away. And some of the conversations, that was just, thank you, Carol. I think you spoke on all of it, just that we're really excited about some of that work that's happening. And we look forward to how it's going to be incorporated this year, and definitely would love to hear feedback from the students and the teachers on how they engage around that, just because it's been so much effort and work, and just to get the that positivity back to see how well it's been incorporated. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions, Ms. Friedel?
I do, and I'm feeling bad that I wasn't at CNI.
You missed a good one.
It sounds like it. Just a couple of questions on first the social justice requirement and the proposed African American history course. Would that, I know we're in initial discussions, but would that be in lieu of one of the other social studies courses like World Civ, I don't know, US history, or would that be in addition to? And where does it fall? Like what category? I'm assuming it falls under, I'm old school, social studies, humanities, history. So then would that make it inclusive for students who have IEPs that get in-class support? Because if it's not a core area, they don't always get the supports. On the Social Justice Committee, I'd just like a little bit more information. Is it all administrators? Is it administrators, teachers, staff, students? Kind of how is that makeup, and what is the goal of that committee? It sounds very exciting. And those are actually my questions.
Dr. Mahan, do you want to respond first?
Absolutely, I can respond. So I'll start with the last question, which was who is on the committee. So the committee is comprised of administrators and teachers, and we have also added students to that committee. Today I actually met with Dr. Perry and Dr. Chapman and Dr. Morton to discuss the students who would be assigned to the committee from their school buildings. We've started with 2 students at East, 2 students at West, and 1 from the alternative high school, and we're looking to expand that once those students really are the voice for their peers. So that's who the committee is comprised of, and we did select the committee members today. They will be on the agenda for the August 25th meeting. There are, I believe, 4 or 5 representatives from the elementary school, 4 or 5 from the middle school, and 7 from the high school. So that's the committee. Where does it fall? Right now, because we are still in the infancy stage, we have not decided where it will be placed. If the students decide, or if the recommendation is ultimately that it will be a high school graduation requirement for an African American Studies course, it would fall in social studies, as Ms. Friedel said. If it is that we are going to gear more towards a social justice perspective, I would say that it would probably fall under our interdisciplinary studies. So we have not made that decision yet, so it would be premature for me to say exactly where it would fall. And then the last question, or the first question that you started with, was, would this be in lieu of one of the other social studies courses? So the courses that our students take now are currently required in order to receive their high school diploma. So it would not take away an additional course. This would be an added course for them to receive a diploma from Cherry Hill Public Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Mahan.
You're welcome. And I do just want to chime in one thing. The book by Dr. Goldie Muhammad, the title of that book is actually Cultivating Genius.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Mahan.
Great, thank you. Did you have any questions, Mr. Goodwin?
No, I don't have any questions, but I do have to say that I really enjoyed the meeting. It was great, and I was really excited about some of the things that the district is planning, and Dr. Mahan did a great job of presenting all the various topics, so it was great.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ovadia, did you have any questions?
No questions, but sounds like great work.
Thank you. Mrs. Tong, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I have, I'm not sure if I understand. Is it the African American classes that's added to the humanities? It's a separate class that we're going to add on. Am I missing a?
Mrs. Tong, it would be a separate class, an additional course for students to fulfill the high school graduation requirements to receive a diploma from Cherry Hill Public Schools.
Okay. So right now, we're not sure when they're going to be added on. Is that correct? As of right now.
We are looking to implement one of the courses during the 2021-2022 academic year.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that, Mrs. Mayhem.
You're welcome.
That's all I have, Ms. Laurie. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any questions, Mrs. Schultz?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, I believe that's everything for CNI. We'll move over to BNF, which is chaired by Mrs. Schultz. If you want to give an update, it was a committee of the whole. So we met as a whole board.
I will. So we did meet August 3rd. It was a committee of the whole. So all board members were in attendance. At the meeting, we revisited the ERI report. We did have representation from ERI and Garrison to answer additional questions from board members. We did have some discussion. Our meeting was cut short because we did have other committee meetings that we did have to attend. So I believe we are going to pick that discussion up. I'm not sure if we're going to have that discussion now or if we're going to have that a little later in the meeting. So that is my report. So I am not sure, Ms. Neary, if we want to have the continued discussion now or later in the evening.
Okay, thank you. I believe, Dr. Malash, we have items under BNF this evening. Do we want to defer and review that at that time?
I would say probably yes.
Okay,
Just to keep
that
the
makes
flow of
most
where
sense.
we are.
Yeah, that makes most sense to me. We can get through the other items.
Yeah.
And Lisa's not here, Mrs. Neary, so if you want, I can quickly do our report. As I'm the only other member on that committee.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was going to ask. Thank you.
Which will be very short because we had HR and executive session, so I will not be able to share anything with the members, but I can share that we will be having another meeting September 8th at 5 p.m. And our next BNF meeting will be September 8th at 7 p.m. So I will add that because I forgot. With that, I will turn it back over. You got two from me tonight.
Quick and short. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So from there, we'll move to P&L, which is chaired by Ms. Friedel. And I don't know if you're going to be able to be that fast.
I don't think I will be that fast, and I don't think that I will try to make P&L as lively as CNI was, but I don't know that I can be as successful. But we did have some legislative updates. So the administration, Dr. Malash and the administration did, actually, let me back up. We started the meeting out with a presentation from Mr. Burns. There was a proposal that was presented that would be asking that at the high schools, students wear their student IDs at all times. So right now, I guess the policy is they have to have it with them somewhere, but it is not on a lanyard necessarily in view. And they are proposing that all students, just like staff and visitors, would need to wear their ID. They have logistics to work out with school pictures and all the different technicalities that our COVID-19 has placed on us in every imaginable way. But they also felt that it would add to the safety because everybody's wearing a mask, so you will know who everybody is. You'll know who the teachers are. You'll know who the staff is. It did start out as a conversation about East and West students, but Mr. Burns was going to go back and include a discussion with the Malberg Alternative High School as well, so that it was consistent and across all 3 high school locations. We then had a legislative update. So there was a review of the new Students' Bill of Rights legislation. And it looks like the first policy has everything required, but Dr. Malash will review with Paul I believe the policy is the 5513, care of school property, where we had added the portion of we may withhold certain opportunities. So Dr. Malash was going to review with Paul the legislation of AA 104 and make sure that we are not violating it. And if we are, we will revisit that part of the policy. We were provided a draft of an anti-racism policy. My numbers aren't all here, but it was a large group of people. I believe 42 people worked on the anti-racism policy. And we were given a copy to give some feedback. Dr. Malash, does the board have access to that draft?
They do not yet,
Okay.
Ms. Friedel. Yeah, and the 42 people, that's the members of the administrative group, the administrative team, principals, assistant principals, supervisors. It was that group that came up with the initial draft. But no, it has not been shared with the full board yet.
Okay.
It will be can be shared with the full board after tonight's meeting.
Perfect.
We'll
Okay.
do it in the memo on Thursday.
All right, thank you. We also had a discussion about how the policy would relate to HIB and how you juggle between these 2 policies. So let's see. Trying to just kind of go through all this. We also did second readings. We had the second reading of the Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the HEAT participation policy for student athlete safety, suspensions and expulsions. We had a first reading on policy 1648, the Restart and Recovery Plan and related documents. Dr. Malash, I believe, is going to give us an update tonight because this is a very fluid policy that keeps changing with all of the adjustments that come from the governor and the Department of Ed and all of the state agencies. We also had a couple of, we had no old business, but we had a few new business items. The committee would like to, in our next meeting, have on the agenda a discussion of the campus police officers and their role and revisiting that policy. And we had a discussion about concerns about the governor's proposal for the bridge year. So there's a bridge year proposal that would be for juniors and seniors this coming year to actually have another year of high school education. And there's a lot of questions that surround that, but we haven't really heard anything since it was first proposed several months ago. So that is my report, but Dr. Malash, I do think that you are going to give us an update on the Restart and Recovery Plan.
Yeah, so the policy, Ms. Friedel, is what we went over last week is where we are still with the policy, which establishes the foundation of what has to be done, the minimum pieces that are there. Actually, when we get into C&I and the voting, in the action part of the committee, I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about our guide, or the plan that we've developed based on that policy work, which is the We Return to Learn plan. So I'll go through and talk some about this. There's a draft that's online. There are some changes that I do want to highlight for the board. So I'll go through that after when it comes up for the vote. It'll be moved and seconded, and when there's discussion, I'll go through at that point and talk about where we are.
Okay, so thank you. So then if there's questions.
We'll do it then. Okay. Okay, was that it, Ms. Friedel?
Yes, if there's any questions.
Okay, I will go around. Mrs. Matlack, did you have any questions?
No, no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Arroyo?
No questions. That we are going to continue to have conversations around the anti-racist policy. There was some, conversation that night, but we definitely want to make sure that's as perfect as can be prior to it being unveiled to everybody. But I can't stress enough how phenomenal it is that this district is looking at this way and incorporating it into all the work, which is why going back to the earlier conversation, if we have this as part of all of the work that we do, looking through a lens of race equity, we will get a lot accomplished, especially with incorporating some more of what the students are feeling right now and staff and administration. So I'm just really excited about it, and thank you so much for everybody and all the hard work that they put into it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Ovadia, do you have any questions?
No questions, just a comment that was a great summary. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwin?
No questions. I do want to second Mr. Avadia's comment. That was a great summary, and also I definitely want to second what Mrs. Arroyo was commenting on as well. I think it's very important work, so thank you.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Tong, do you have any questions?
No, I don't, Ms. Leary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Schultz?
Just one question, Ms. Friedel. In regards to the new business of the campus police policy, was the discussion regarding potentially amending the roles and responsibilities of the campus police, or eliminating them altogether?
I believe the conversation is to have a relook at the entire campus police process and evaluate and see where we are and what the necessity is, and if it's working or if it's not working, or if there's any changes, or revisiting the whole concept. So it's a pretty wide conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. I think that would be my only comment, is perhaps that's something when we get to it, because I know it's been brought up before, but more from a discussion around shared services. And I think it's a great conversation that we should be having, and then perhaps maybe at some point in one of the work sessions, it be a full board discussion, because I think it's an excellent conversation to have, given where we are. Okay, that's really the only comment or question I had. And that was for P&L. Thank you, Ms. Friedel. For strategic planning, I'll turn it over to Mr. Ovadia.
Yes, we did not meet in strategic planning last month, but rather began the discussion around board goals that continues tonight. And then I guess my question for administration is, so if we would like another session, is it possible our September 8th, 8 p.m. meeting would be of the whole or not?
Is Mr. Vadi, so just clarify, so is it possible for us to have a discussion that night?
Right. So I know that by the end of September, we're targeting having board goals. Last month, I know that instead of strategic planning, we did that discussion of board goals, which continues tonight. But my question is, if we need additional time, is it possible we'd make next month's sort of a committee of the whole to discuss or obviate it?
So I don't know that we would move all of the committee meetings in September, and that's something that we can talk about as we get through August. I don't know that I would move all the committee meetings onto the September the 8th date and do a full committee of the whole. But we can certainly expand the discussion and, you know, at the work session about goals. That can just be a more expansive discussion that goes through. There are some additional items that we really do need to touch base with through strategic planning with the basis of the committee, especially as we're going to talk about the work that Garrison's going to do this year, the architects, and what the plans are that we have going through, and what we want to lay out for, you know, the next 11 months or so. But the goal discussion certainly can be expanded on September the 8th during the work session.
Okay, sounds good. So our next committee meeting then is September 8th at 8 p.m. I believe I'm the only member that continues on strategic planning, so look forward to hearing what the new folks are thinking for our work this year, and looking forward to it. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. So given that there was no strategic planning meeting the last go, we'll go ahead and move into our first public comment. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. The first public comment session is for agenda items only. There'll be another public comment section for any topic at the end of the meeting. And I will hand it over to Mrs. Sugars to review any comments that she's received.
Okay, I have a few. Again, not all of them are clear on what agenda item they might be referring to, so I will make a guess here. And again, I will apologize if I don't pronounce your name correctly. I believe this first item is in reference to the Return to Learn plan from Jeff Podowitz, 110 Kilbourne Drive. It was he's referencing an op-ed why New Jersey should decide right now to start the school year with statewide remote learning. For greater detail, read the article attached. It was authored on New Jersey Spotlight August 7th by Patricia Wright, Executive Director of the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association. She writes, the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association has consistently raised concerns about the lack of universal and mandatory state health requirements for all schools in the state. Ambiguous health and safety guidelines provide what we believe is a dangerous level of flexibility in an area where educators are not experts. The NJPSA acknowledges the challenge of remote learning. However, even if schools open with a hybrid plan, these issues would still not have been adequately addressed. Yet, by making the decision to return to school remotely now, we could turn our collective creativity and resources to addressing these issues together. Statewide development of learning tools by the New Jersey Department of Education in collaboration with educators and based on our learning standards will ensure that students in all districts have access to a vibrant curriculum. Note also, even if a school opens with a hybrid plan, we have not adequately addressed the child care concerns of parents needing to return to work. If students or staff become ill and schools have to return to a fully virtual instruction, the issue remains. I did ask in a previous meeting in July, how is the state and federal government facilitating the school districts obtaining these needed PPEs and supplies? Do we have state or regional manufacturers of these items? What happens when the so-called second wave comes to New Jersey? Has the feds and state adequately addressed these and other medical related concerns? Will adequate testing be readily available? Our school district does not operate in a bubble. What about the concerns so far unaddressed by the state mentioned in this op-ed article? As a district, Cherry Hill School District and others may have been mandated to develop plans for reopening that include hybrid and all virtual, ready or not. As individuals on the board, you can voice your concerns as you discuss the resolution plans before you vote. As a board, you can add your concerns in writing into the resolution, please. The next item is from Jen Nadio, 224 North Madison Avenue. Good evening. Cherry Hill Special Education PTA has been looking through the remote and cohort plans for the road back to school and continuity of learning on September 8th. And we have spoken to Dr. Malash and Mrs. Weddington in August 10th, 2020. There's a real concern for students with invisible disabilities with IEPs and 504s that will only have direct contact with teachers 2 days a week in the schools. This actually doesn't meet many of their IEP goals, modifications, and accommodations, and 504 accommodations. Families have requested that these students attend school 4 days a week. There's also a concern that their remote logistics have not been completed, and many families don't know how to prepare their students to learn with less than a month until this begins. We've also learned that medical 504s have not been decided upon for snacks during the hybrid cohorts, as currently no eating is to occur on school grounds or buses. We realize the agenda states that Cherry Hill BOE is to vote on the plan without specific ideas to help these students so they do not regress further. We ask you to vote no to the plan. Secondly, the Cherry Hill Special Education PTA sent out a petition to bring American Disability Act critical and necessary disparities in all 19 of the Cherry Hill School District buildings to the public's notice. As of 5:30 p.m. Tuesday, August 11th, there were 353 signatures and 54 comments that are asking Cherry Hill School District to be ADA accessible. Most who saw it or signed were very confused. Federal law is federal law. Why would we need a petition? Unfortunately, we need a petition to advocate for a vote no to the vestibule so that funding can be allocated to ADA critical and necessary fixes. ADA is federal law. Vestibules are not federally mandated. We also feel that the CHBOE requests a new report from administration to have the architect investigate all 19 school doors, classrooms, gyms, parking lots, and playgrounds. All with disabilities who attend or visit the Cherry Hills Public Schools are denied equity and accessibility to many areas of the district. Students have not been able to attend their neighborhood schools due to lack of accessibility. Students, staff, administrators, visitors, and parents with disabilities to attend the schools don't have full access to front doors, playgrounds, elevators, parking, etc. Please follow the law and vote no to vestibules. Rick Short, 1002 Cheltenham Parkway. Please vote no on the vestibule project tonight. Ever since the ERI report, we all know Cherry Hill School District is just hundreds of thousands of dollars away from an ADA lawsuit. We also know the cost of the VEC project is an astounding $1,050,000 and could possibly be New Jersey's second most expensive security vestibule ever built. Finally, please listen to the community needs. We know right now a petition to build more vestibules doesn't exist, but over 353 Cherry Hill residents want ADA to become compliant. So please vote no for the VEC vestibule tonight. I believe those are all of our comments related to agenda items.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mrs. Sugars. Okay, that brings us to our special action agenda. We'll go ahead and move into curriculum and instruction. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, resolution to approve a professional service proposal. Number 2, approval of out-of-district placement for 2020-2021 school year. Number 3, approval of nursing standing orders for 2020-2021 school year. Number 4, approval of the We Return to Learn plan and revised continuity learning guide for the 2020-2021 school year. Number 5, approval of the digital divide grant. And that's it. Do I have a second, Mrs. Matlack?
Yes, I second that.
Great, thank you. Okay, I will now turn it over to Dr. Malash to go into a little more detail around Return to Learn.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. Let me just get this pulled up. So we're going to talk a little bit about the We Return to Learn plan. There's been a draft of this that has been posted on the website since after our board meeting on July the 28th. There continue to be additional revisions as more information has come out from the state with guidelines and protocols for schools as we prepare to open. So again, just to cover anticipated adoption now. I do have to say that the state has not required that this plan in this format be adopted. Ms. Friedel, when she did the report for P&L, talked about policies. The policies must be adopted because it's what governs what we do. This plan is our implementation, the practicality of what it looks like and what's going on in our school district. But there is not a requirement from the Department of Ed for the board to act on it and to actually adopt it. We put it on the agenda to ask the board to adopt it in solidarity with the staff members who have worked so diligently to put this together and preparing this comprehensive plan to return to school in September. Some important pieces, and I'm only going to point out a couple of the highlights that are in here, but there's a tremendous amount of information. On the website, there are links that go through. So as you look, it's highlighted in blue. Each time you click on one of these, it'll take you to a new section that is in the document. So as an example, as we talked about earlier, we have strategic goals. These are the umbrella goals that guide what we are doing as a district. They've guided the discussions and the work that the committees have done and the preparation of these plans. So these are located in here. There's a historical piece about what the online learning, what the different phases have been, what we did in the past, what we'll do in preparation with the opening of schools for staff on September 3rd and 4th. And then we're looking at a first semester, first half of the year plan from September the 8th, which is the first day of school, through January 29th, which is mid-year. Information about the first days of school, definitions about what the hybrid model that we are looking at is. So it goes through here and talks about what is a hybrid model. What does it mean? What's it mean to be asynchronous? What's it mean to be synchronous? Again, 2 words and the definitions are located in the document. Something that is synchronous is happening live. It's in sync. It's happening at the same time. So synchronous instruction could be instruction when a child is in a classroom and the teacher is there teaching. Or could be if the teacher is teaching and it's being broadcast and the child is watching online, that is synchronous. Something that is asynchronous, something that is not in sync, is something that where information could be posted on Google Classroom, or things like that, where the students will be pulling it down. In most of our children's lives, asynchronous work from a teacher is that work that a child would have that would be assigned for homework. Any work that our children have done historically at home or on a weekend or going to the library is asynchronous. That's not being done at the same time when the teacher is there. So again, some important information, talks about the Cooperative Learning Day. Our hybrid schedule has every Monday as a Cooperative Learning Day. All the instruction that's going to take place is going to be done in a remote or a virtual setting. This goes through, explains what those hybrid days look like. And then it goes through each of the different levels. What does it look like for Barclay, for the Barclay Early Childhood Center? What's the Cooperative Learning Day look like at Barclay? And again, Barclay is a unique situation because of its early childhood status, because of what it's doing in the population of children that are being served. There's direct contact that's coming out from Mrs. Rockhill, who's the principal at Barclay, from the Child Study Team case managers, directly to families about what that schedule looks like at Barclay. Goes through and talks about the instructional model. What does it look like? What's the information? How are the children attending school? Because it does look different at Barclay than it does at the other levels. Then goes through the elementary school model, the hybrid model at the elementary school. Again, different on Monday because Monday is a Cooperative Learning Day. Tuesday through Friday are the cohort days. You can see throughout the document, cohort A, elementary, middle, and high school are identified in purple. Cohort B students, elementary, middle, and high school are identified in red. Yesterday afternoon, early yesterday evening, emails went out to all the families. So the families were it was identified for them what cohort their children had been assigned to. We are operating each of our schools Tuesday through Friday on an early dismissal schedule, which means that at the elementary level, the instructional time for children is from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. when children will be in school. So as an example, on Tuesday, cohort A is in school. It's synchronous learning. If a family has selected full remote or full virtual learning for their children and they're assigned to cohort A, that means that they will be on the live stream and watching what's going on in the classroom, interacting with their cohort. In the afternoon, between 2:30 and 3:30, the students who were on remote learning asynchronously in the morning, which was cohort B, will have remote synchronous, which means that they will be online with their teachers. Their teachers will be touching base with them. And then it changes on Wednesday, back to that same cohort on Thursday, and again, changing back on Wednesday, on Friday. So what it looks like is that every child on Monday will have synchronous learning. So all of the students at the elementary in the morning will be together online. Teachers will have both cohorts together. Then on Tuesday morning, it's Tuesday and Thursday morning, cohort A will have live instruction. On Tuesday afternoon and Thursday afternoon, cohort B will have live instruction. On Wednesday and Friday, cohort B will have live instruction in the morning, and cohort A will have live instruction in the afternoon. Goes through, there's more details about what it will look like. And there's also information if we have to change, make that pivot, make that move to full virtual for everybody. That information is located within here as well as what will that schedule look like if we go to full remote learning. Middle school hybrid model is also listed in here. Again, Monday is a collaborative learning day. Tuesday through Friday are set up similarly to the elementary level. So on Monday at the middle level, cohort A, cohort B, everybody's together. All of the classes in the middle level will meet. On Monday, class is about 30 minutes long. Teacher will have, there will be live instruction, touching base, having all the kids together, doing that goal setting, making sure that the pace of the classes are together, allowing the children that are in the same classes to be able to match up. On Tuesday and Thursday, cohort A will be in school. We're doing the live synchronous in the morning. Cohort B will be asynchronous. Then in the afternoon, cohort B will be synchronous. Cohort A will be asynchronous. So all of the students have live instruction every day, Monday through Friday. On Monday, they are all together. On Tuesday through Friday, they're broken into their cohorts. All students have live touch with their teachers every day. Again, goes through additional details. We have at the elementary level, talks about the remote learning, goes into about grading, and then again, also transition into that full hybrid model. Sets up the schedule for what it will look like in a full hybrid model. I'm sorry, in a full remote instruction model. And then to the high schools, again, Monday is a collaborative learning day. All 8 classes will meet on Monday at the high school level. All 8 classes will meet. See the classes, again, about 30 minutes long. Gives the teachers an opportunity to have all of the students together, direct instruction, pacing for the class for the week, talking about the week, going through the information that's important. On Tuesday and Thursday, cohort A, again, you can see that they are purple. They are in school or doing live instruction in the morning. You can see classes are 57 minutes long, which allows for a reduction in the movement throughout the day. In the afternoon, when cohort A is on live synchronous instruction in the morning, cohort B has live synchronous instruction in the afternoon. The cohort A students will be permitted and invited if they would like to go on with the cohort B kids in the afternoon. Again, they can all match up every afternoon for these classes, as you can see. Cohort A students will also have the option, again, to continue with their homework, the work that's been assigned from the morning. We will use this as additional support for students. Again, every student, live instruction every day. Again, like the other levels, goes through, talks into more detail about the proper learning day, the structure of the days and the learning days, about instruction on remote learning, grading, transition from a hybrid to a full remote learning. Should we have to go to that model? Again, what that looks like, how it will be structured and set up. Again, which also continues to have the live instruction every day. Goes through and summarizes here about the full remote learning at each of the different levels, what that means. We also then go in and talk about additional details, professional development for staff, student flow, entry, exit, and common areas, screening, mask expectations, personal hygiene, accommodations for students and staff, contact tracing, special ed and related services, identification of self-contained classes, what it looks like for those self-contained classes, what it looks like for mainstream students, in-class resource and pull-out resource, related services, IEP and 504 accommodations, ESL services, student supports during online learning, meals and meal access, the school-age childcare, school trips. Again, we've talked about this. There'll be no school trips. We'll revisit that in December for a reevaluation beginning in February. We won't have visitors to schools, district assessments and standardized testing, where we currently are with athletics, attendance, communication, technology support, guidelines for students when they are online. It's an etiquette piece talking about confidentiality as well. Guidance for parents. Ms. Esposito, who's our technology colleague teacher, has been working with Dr. Mahan and the folks in the curriculum office. We're putting together some online tutorials where there'll be some direct contact that'll be available for parents, a parent university type piece that will launch later this month in preparation for the opening of the school year. Guidance for students. Again, we talked about the parent university. Pandemic response teams. We will have a district-wide pandemic response team and then individually building-based pandemic response teams. Our members of our Return to Work Committee are transitioning into the district-wide pandemic response teams. We'll be inviting representation from the Board of Education on the pandemic response. There'll be parent representation at each of the building pandemic response teams. Talk about transportation, facilities and cleaning practices. Later this month, we have full training going on for our custodians and our cleaners. We'll be videotaping some of that, doing still pictures so folks can see about what the cleaning practices look like. And again, then our school calendar. So a lot of information to kind of go through. This was shared out with the board yesterday. A lot of the information is similar or the same as what was posted previously. It's on our website. This will be updated on our website after the board meeting tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Malash. I'll go around now for questions. I'll start with Mrs. Matlack.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I was able to read through the entire plan when we received it, and I just want to express my gratitude to all the staff members and the tremendous amount of work and thought and detail that was covered. And what we're seeing in the final plan, I know, is only a small fraction of what was discussed and considered as they went through the plan. And I believe that given these circumstances, that they've done a tremendous job. So I just wanted to express my gratitude for their work on this, for our students and for our staff as we start this very unprecedented new school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Matlack. Yes, there's about 80 staff members that have participated in the work of these committees. There's been 2 parents that have participated in the work of the committees. Especially with the return to school committees, as additional information has come out from the state, and we've made revisions. There are a lot of folks, a lot of our teachers, therapists, child safety members, guidance counselors, nurses, administrators, been working late into the evening. I know there were folks working all day Saturday and Sunday this past weekend, going through, making the revisions so that it is prepared, because there is such an abbreviated time frame, and they understand the pressure. They want to get it out to the community. They want to get it out to their colleagues, but an incredible amount of work that's gone into. So I appreciate that, and we'll certainly share that with the teams.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mrs. Tong, did you have any questions?
No, I do not have any, Miss Laurie. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ovadia?
Yep, no questions. And I appreciate all the admin work that went into this and the teams involved, and I appreciate all the diligence on it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ms. Friedel?
Of course, when my dog starts barking. I do have a few questions, Dr. Malash. Again, thank you. I know that school districts across the country are struggling with reopening. So I apologize if I missed any of this in the plan. I did read through it, but I may not have missed some of it. So let me start with if a student or a staff member is found to be positive with COVID-19, it may have been there, I didn't see it. What is the process for notifying the staff and the families of those who have been in contact with that individual? I know that the health department is doing the contact tracing, but I also know that the DOE is holding the districts responsible for notifying the health department first, and then the staff and the families. I also wasn't sure if I saw in there anything about the isolation room. I don't know if that's the proper terminology, but if you do have somebody who presents in the building with symptoms, the designated spaces, how that's being identified, or if it has been identified. On a more academic level, I'm a little concerned, I guess, about the amount of time that students are going to be on devices. So when I look at the different plans, and my concern is greater for our youngest learners, our preschoolers, our kindergartners, our first graders, etc. But when I look at the plan, for example, the Cooperative Learning Day for Barclay has a full class virtual meeting for an hour, followed by encore classes for 30 minutes, followed by creative curriculum and SEL lessons for 30 minutes, and then conferring feedback small groups for 90 minutes. How much of that time is on devices? The recommendations, the American Academy of Pediatrics, is no more than an hour a day for that age group. So I'm just concerned if we're going to have the students on devices for 3 hours plus. And that concern actually goes all the way to the high school level, where they're either remote all day and then on the device in the afternoon, or they're in school and then come home on the device. It's, my life has been devices all day for 4 months, and my eyes hurt and my brain hurts. So it is a concern. So are there opportunities where the work will not be device based? Which also leads me to question, when they are in school, are they going to have textbooks and materials, or are the students to come in with their Chromebooks when they're on the hybrid day and they're going to be working from their computers? I also want to just follow that up with, when the teachers are teaching and they're live streaming, does that mean the teacher will have to stay in one spot so they can't assist students who may be struggling with a concept? Are they going to be expected to basically say, this is your X, so that the remote students can see you? And then 2 other really quick questions, or maybe 3. I know that for the students who are going to be in school on the days they're in school, you're going to do a grab and go lunch. Are they also going to be getting breakfast for the next morning? And how have you come up with the plan for the students who are fully remote on the meal process? Jax. And then we have just wondering about supply lists, because I know the rare times I go into stores, I see the school supplies and I haven't purchased anything because I don't know what will be needed. So will there be an updated supply list coming from the schools for parents to know what to get? And my other question really has to do with some of the classrooms. So if I know we're testing and maintaining the air conditioning units and so forth, but is there a plan if a room's air conditioner does not work? Do we take that room offline? Are there rooms that don't have windows that are operational? Are they able to be used, or do we have to relocate students for the ventilation issues? And that's my questions.
All right, so if somebody tests positive, there's a positive result for COVID. Our first step, and again, we've been working with Dr. Pascal Nawako, who's the director of the Camden County Health Department. Our first step is to make notification to the Camden County Department of Health. And then depending upon what the circumstances are with the positive test and what goes on, we will then get direction from the Department of Health about what steps we need to take as a district in terms of notification. The Department of Health will manage all of the contact tracing for any positive result that comes through. So we will work with the department, and if they direct us, again, to notify a certain cohort of people, we will make that notification, but it'll be based on the directive from the medical professionals, who will advise us about what steps to take. So there's a second office space or second space that nurses will use in every one of our buildings. We are not going to, in the buildings, refer to them as isolation rooms, just because we're COVID rooms or things like that. Because again, adults, unfortunately, and children, that'll become something that it's not. But there is a space that's been identified. Mr. Bart, who's our director of operations, he and Miss Adrian have been co-chairing the Return to Work Committee. Mr. Bart has met in all 19 of the schools, as we've talked about access and flow in the building, arrival, departure, restrooms, water fountains, bottle filling stations, nurses' offices, main offices, that kind of thing. So those have been identified in each one of the buildings. Information about what it's like in each one of the schools will come out specifically from the building principals. I agree with you about being concerned about the amount of time the kids spend on devices. I do. We are in all of it, and Dr. Mann can probably be more articulate about some of the discussions that have gone on in the committee, but there's always a discussion about taking a break from devices, something we talked about in the spring. And this really is something, that's an interesting debate, because I've heard from a lot of parents about this. Now, there are parents that expect their kids to be online for 6.5 hours a day and want to make sure that their kids are on a computer. I don't think it's healthy for anybody to be online 6.5 hours a day. And I agree with Ms. Friedel. I get so tired of looking at a computer screen during the course of a day. You have to be able to walk away. In each one of the days, in each one of the schedules, there is time that is built in. When you look at the collaborative learning day, when you look at the full remote schedule, if we were to go to that, there's a break that is built in. I don't expect that the children at Barkley will be live and engaged on the computers, for 3 hours or 4 hours at a time. I just don't think that is a developmental possibility that's going to be able to take place. Again, the gifted dedication of the teachers, the therapists, and staff members that are in that building, the certificated and the educational assistants and all who work with the students and their families, there's a lot of contact, there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of communication about who's going to need to be on at what time. And also with the assumption and the understanding that very few of the 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds who attend Barkley are going to be able to go online on their own. So there's going to be a caregiver of some sort who's going to be with them when that takes place. But no, I honestly don't expect that that's going to be a possibility for them to be there. Same thing with the elementary, middle, and high school kids. It's part of the purpose of the asynchronous piece of the learning as well. There are, and again, all throughout the spring, and I'm sure we'll talk about it during the year, taking a break to go outside, to play outside, to have a snack, to read a book, to do something that's different, play with toys. All of that is incredibly important for children. They should not be online 6.5 hours a day. It's just not healthy for them. And we will continue to encourage that. But again, some of that is the value and the purpose of the asynchronous part of what goes on. When teachers are live stream, will they have to stay in one spot? They won't. The camera will be set. It'll be stationary, so it will be, if the teacher's teaching in front of the room, that's where it will focus on. The teacher will certainly walk out of that frame at times as she's working or he's working with other children, just as they would honestly in a classroom. And I think this is one of the, as we talk about things and as we get closer to school opening, and then once school opens, we'll talk about what does the day look like? What does it feel like? We'll get some images of children and teachers. Because we also need to remember that when children are in a school classroom on a daily basis, there's not direct engagement one-to-one with the teacher, again, for 6.5 hours a day. That's just not real, in terms of what goes through. There's times in a classroom where a child has to wait because the teacher's talking to another child, or working with somebody in a small group. That will be part of what goes on here as well. There'll be times when a teacher will be engaged with a child on the computer, who's in that remote session, and somebody in the classroom is going to have to wait, right? Because they're going to have to wait their turn for the additional support. Same thing, there's times when teacher will be working with a child in the classroom, somebody that's online is going to have to wait for that additional contact to go in. Again, which is one of those learning things that takes place in a classroom that isn't necessarily measured in standard assessment. Grab and go lunches. Yeah, so this Sugars and our new manager from Aramark, we've talked a number of times. They've gone back and forth quite a bit. We're meeting with the principals about what does the grab and go look like, time built into the schedule during the course of the day. What will we do with lunch and breakfast? What does the pickup look like, both for children that are on full remote and children that are on the hybrid who will be in school on alternating days? And what does it look like for us to document who receives the meals when they go through? Again, that's still being developed. Additional information about that will come out. And I think you summed it up, Ms. Friedel, when you were doing the report out for P&L earlier. This is dynamic. This is constantly changing, in terms of what goes on. This document will be a living and breathing document, as updates or changes are made to it online. We will send out notification. Mrs. Wilson will push that information out. If it's something of direct substance and significance, we'll do direct email out to everybody, as opposed to just the other notifications that go through. So thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Goodwin, did you have any questions?
I'm sorry to cut you off. I have a family emergency and I have to oh, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yes. I guess I have questions around a couple things. Number one, and it may say it in the document, I didn't see it anywhere, but what about gym? Is that part of the curriculum or not part of it? Because I feel like I know there's supposed to be supports in place in case one of the students needs emotional support or whatever, there's a way to reach out. But I'm thinking proactively, how do you help the students release tension and I mean, just be, I know you talked about them on their own, but is there like any coordinated times where you're expecting the students, like, I don't know, whether in class or online, to do any kind of, things to take their mind off of the school and give them some kind of boost or something like that? Is that planned in the schedule? And I'm just thinking, especially like for kids that may be completely remote, how do you help them? Is there any proactive ways, or do they just have to reach out if they need help for items? That's my question.
Thanks, Eric. So phys ed, health and PE are still part of the curriculum. It is one of the questions that we've asked directly to the Department of Ed. Health and PE is the only curricular area that requires a specific number of minutes per week for instruction. It's 150 minutes per week. And we accomplish that in a number of different ways at the elementary, middle, and high school. But that is still a requirement that's there. So what will that look like? It'll look different, right? Again, at the different levels, and we will. I know that we have health and PE teachers that are developing lessons and looking beyond what just would be considered a traditional phys ed class. For one, at the secondary level, the locker rooms will be closed. We will not use locker rooms. Students will not get changed in school for phys ed. And there's a wide array of activities in which students can engage and still remain socially distanced, both inside and outside. There's certainly, Eric, is a value if we can get kids outside into fresh air, right? There's lots of different things that can be done outside in health and PE, but there are also things that can be done in the classroom. Some of our teachers over the last 4, 5, 6 years honestly have gone through and done a lot with mindfulness. There's been a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of training. We've had teachers that have offered training about mindfulness. It's something that's discussed quite frequently, again, from the early childhood center all the way up through the high schools. So there's a piece for that about how do you address tension and frustration to go in. One of my favorite times often in visiting elementary schools is when they would do the little Go Noodle brain breaks. The teachers have become masterful at working with their students and knowing, because there is a time when students need to have a break, when they cannot directly attend to what's going on. Again, at every level, and relying on the expertise of our teachers to be able to provide that break and that opportunity for a moment so they can become refocused is, again, an incredibly valuable teaching tool. How do we help students, provide students who are on full remote instruction and support? So a number of different ways. One, we will hope that the students will self-identify. We'll hope that a parent will self-identify if the child needs or report the child needs additional support. The teacher with her or his interaction with the child, both in terms of work and direct interaction, through the screen when they're on remote instruction. Often we receive referrals from other students, and that kind of thing. The teachers, the counselors, the staff members in our schools, again, there are children that we've continued to check up on and follow up with during the course of the summer, much as we did back in the course of the spring. Some students need additional support, and again, we rely on that network of the family, the student itself, friends, teachers, to identify and say, can somebody reach out? Can somebody provide some, just an additional check-in? Just for that question, are you okay, right? How are you? Is there something else that we can provide? So thank you for those questions. Kim, I apologize. I think I missed a couple of your questions. You asked about supply lists, and when supply lists, I'm sorry, when they will be, what will be needed. I would tell you to contact the schools directly. I know that some of the supply lists have gone out. Some of the elementary ones, I'm not sure. I think the middle ones, typically there are not supply lists for the high schools. Again, what the child is comfortable with in terms of notebooks, folders, backpack. We are encouraging everybody to have a backpack, especially if they're attending school at school, so they can keep their materials together, and have that all in one spot. What do we do? What's the plan if a classroom air conditioner doesn't work? Do we take the room offline? What happens? So again, one of the realities that we have dealt with through the years is that does happen, right? Mm-hmm. We, in the room that Mrs. Schultz and Mrs. Sugars and I are in, there are window units. If the window unit were to break down in a classroom, hopefully the first quick option is to replace it. That's not always possible at that time. So there are times when we have to relocate a class to another space. Same thing, we've had classrooms where, the light goes out, where there's a leak, because of the state of our facilities. We would have to relocate them. One of the things that principals are working on right now is we do have spaces in the majority of our buildings that don't necessarily have windows in them. Now, there has to be a ventilation system in those rooms. Those have been checked, will continue to be checked. That's not to say that they won't not work or won't stop working at some point. We have to be able to move those children and that teacher to a different space where there is appropriate ventilation that exists. We're having a discussion about windows being open, about doors being open. What does that look like? How do we manage that? Specific protocols will come out again individually from the schools about how they are going to address them and how they're going to focus. So, Eric, Mr. Goodwin, thank you for your questions. Ms. Bridell, I apologize for dropping those off at the end.
I think there was one more, Dr. Malash, that you didn't answer.
Would you close that?
Will there be materials in the classrooms, or will the children be basically just using the Chromebooks for their time?
Textbook, yes, about textbooks and materials. There will be. So some of it will be dependent upon the class. the content area, the subject matter, and what's being assigned.
Okay, so when they're
Which I know is a very broad piece, but as we look again across the district, more specifics about that will come out from the individual classrooms and individual schools.
Okay, can I ask one more question that I forgot to ask?
Sure.
So with all of the students leaving, you know, after the 4-hour day, and then they go home and they do the rest of the day at home, for our student athletes, how is that going to work for those students who play sports, or I guess marching band, if there's marching band? I mean, I believe most things right now are continuing. Is it going to be incumbent on the child to get back to the school at whatever time of day?
That's my question.
So as of right now, athletics and marching band, those activities will continue. What that actually will look like, how do children return to campus or get on campus, we are having those discussions right now.
Thank you.
Sure, good question.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll go real quick and then I'll pass it to Mrs. Schultz since Ms. Rorio had to depart. Ms. Friedel covered off pretty much everything I could think of. So my 2 questions would be extracurriculars. How outside of sports? I think we've talked about it, but we haven't really come to conclusion on what's being done for our clubs and such, how they're moving forward to ensure that interaction for those students that don't participate in sports. And then my second question would be around the social and emotional support for our students that are remote only to keep, I mean, not that they need any more support than the other students, but really trying to keep in mind that they are not there in person in any way, shape, and that could be good, bad, I don't know. And then lastly, I do cannot stress, you know, regardless of this evening, the support for the committee members and to thank them for their time that they have put into this effort. I know this is not a small order. It's not, I mean, it's Herculean for any organization, and many companies have not come to grips with how they're bringing many of their employees back into the offices if they are. So, and with the complexities around school, I am very keenly aware and do appreciate their time and effort in trying to put together a plan to get us moving again in September. So I wanted to make sure to thank them. And that was it.
So extracurriculars outside of sports, so they will still run, right? So, and there's always a combination of extracurricular activities that exist again at all the levels. Newspaper, student government, you know, clubs like that. We expect that those all will continue to run. As I meet with the principals, I know it's one of the topics tomorrow that the middle school principals and I will be talking about. You know, at the middle school and high school, there have been a lot of additional clubs that have run, some with small groups, some with larger groups. You know, that's something that gets discussed year in and year out about what they are able. It's based on student interest, based on, you know, somebody being willing to be the advisor for it. But we expect that those will run. They will all be running virtually as we start the year. Same thing with like the small music groups. You know, there are typically small music groups at the middle schools and the high schools. They will be meeting, but they'll be meeting virtually. We'll begin that, even if we have to go, you know, later into the fall, looking at the theater programs. You know, some of the folks who do the theater work at the high school shared examples of a couple schools in the spring who produced their musicals online, you know, back in the spring. But all of those things will continue. And again, that student interaction, both with the adults and their peers, is so incredibly important. And it's such an incredible important part of what we believe in Cherry Hill, that school and the school experience are for our children. Again, some of that will be more clearly defined once the staff gets back and schools are open and they can be in contact with the kids. I agree with you about the social emotional piece, especially for all the children. And then for what's the level of sensitivity for kids who may be on remote instruction. So they will still be participating in lessons with school counselors at the elementary level, with teachers at the other levels as well, with their classmates. They'll be doing, I know that Mrs. Minjin has been in contact with the counselors and SAC counselors, again, to talk about some of that specific follow-up that we know and is going to need to be done. And some of it's going to be that there has to be, like I say, those questions asked of how are you, to make that check-in and make that a priority. So thank you, Ms. Neary, for the questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Mrs. Schultz?
Yeah, so I again want to, I agree with my colleagues. I just, again, overwhelming thanks to the staff members, the parents who put in countless hours and who will probably continue to put in additional hours, as this is just an ongoing fluid situation. So I can't thank everybody enough. I do have a question. This might not be the right time to ask, so if not, we can table it. But I just had a question in regards to, I know it really does seem like a really fairly small percentage of people who have not responded. Yes. And I was just curious, what does that look like in regards to the outreach to those, that really small percentage? Are we doing perhaps like mail? Like, are we building principals reaching out? That was my question.
Yep. Good question. So as of today, we have had a little more than 9,000 people respond to the survey that was opened up a couple of weeks ago. So there's about 1,000 people that we do not have responses for. Those 1,000 children were still assigned to a cohort. Contact information went out. Individual contact is taking place from each one of the schools to follow up with those parents, just to see, one, do we not have good contact information? Two, what are you thinking? What do you want to talk about? Where are you? So we make sure, again, that those children, the needs of those children are being addressed as we prepare to open up the school year. And again, as we sit here, as we're in the board meeting tonight, it's August the 11th. School starts. Well, actually, 28 days from now, the first day of school will be over. Some of us will be back together in meetings, because it's September the 8th. But September the 8th, 28 days from now, is our first day of school. One of the things I also want to reiterate and to mention with the board and to the community is that we have a full remote learning plan that is up and ready to go. There's been a lot of discussion as schools have opened in other parts of the country and what the impact has been. We've seen schools in Pennsylvania have been announcing that they're going to begin on a full remote schedule. I've been in contact with our legislatures. There is pending legislation about requiring school districts to operate, to begin on a full remote schedule through the end of October. That's still being discussed. As of today, there is not a provision from the state of New Jersey or the Department of Education to open up a school district on a full remote schedule. That plan will not be approved by the Department of Ed. It just right now does not exist. So we are listening, we are watching intently. As soon as we have information, if there is going to be a pivot or a change, we will absolutely share that out with the community. Again, health and safety, it continues to be our focus, it continues to be a priority in the discussions we are looking at. And again, following the guidelines that we have from the state, Department of Ed, Camden County Department of Health, following up with the American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as the Centers for Disease Control, remains in the forefront of our work. And just as so many of you mentioned, I mentioned earlier, just a very special thanks to all the people who have been so intimately involved in this work. And you're right, Mr. Schultz, you just said it, the work's not done. We'll continue to work on this over the course of the next month, and I'm sure once school gets opened up. So thank you to the board, thanks board members for your questions and your support of the work, and I appreciate it.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, I think that's it. I'll hand it up to Ms. Friedel.
I have a question not related to the remote, the learning policy. Item 12.5, the digital divide grant. So the grant hasn't been written. We're just approving, allowing the district to write the grant.
Now the grant's already been submitted.
Oh, it has?
Yeah, the submittal time frame when it was released and when we had to submit it was before that the board was going to be able to meet and take action. So Mr. Plavinsky and Dr. Mahan presented it to the C&I committee. I think Mrs. Matlack went through and talked about it, but it already has been submitted. I can tell you that we put in for about $1.8 million worth of hardware. Does that sound right, Mr. Flavinsky? I think you're on, and Dr. Mahan, included laptops, Chromebooks, additional hotspots for connectivity.
That is correct, Dr. Malash.
Thanks, Dr. Mahan.
Thank you. I misunderstood the report. So thank you so much for clarifying.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, I'll hand it over to Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, the online voting is open. Cast your votes.
And then we have to notify you if we are not approving or abstaining for an item under this section, correct?
Yes, I can go through that. You can vote yes on the other items and then I'll run through it. You want to do that?
Okay, yeah, why don't we do that with each board member, then we'll go around.
Okay, Ms. Friedel, is there any item you want to abstain or vote no on?
No, I'm fine.
Mr. Goodwin?
I'm good. Thank you.
Mrs. Matlack?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Mary?
Yeah, no to item 12.4.
Mr. Green? If Mrs. Neary made the motion, is that appropriate if she's voting no?
Yes,
It
that's
is.
appropriate. You can move or second and still vote no.
Got it. Okay, wanted to check. Mr. Avadia?
Yes, I just want to abstain on 12.4, but yes to the rest.
Mrs. Schultz?
No, thank you.
Mrs. Tom?
Yeah, I can't disappear me. Hold on, let me go back to the note again. I will abstain from 12.4. Everything else is good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move into human resources. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following.
We need to go back to BNF, Lori.
Oh, I jumped right over it. I'm sorry. So still stands, superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Item 13.1, approval of bill lists. Item 13.2, resolution to amend the 2020-2021 general fund budget. Item 13.3, resolution approving vended meals contract between Yale School West, Ellisburg, and Cherry Hill Board of Education. Item 13.4, resolution for the award of bids. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mrs. Schultz. Okay, we'll move around for questions. I'll go ahead and start, and I unfortunately can't see everybody on the screen, so I'll just go ahead in random order. Mrs. Schultz, I'll start with you.
So I guess I know we had some discussion that we needed to continue in regards to the back vestibule that we had started in BNF's, the BNF committee. So I'll go ahead and open it up. I think Ms. Friedel, when we were talking, I think you had a couple questions that you were trying to ask in the earlier session. I know I'd asked a bunch of questions, so I will pass it to you if you want to continue to ask your questions. I thought I saw your hand raised when we were in exec session. I don't.
No, but I mean,
I apologize. I know we ran out of time and I saw your hand raised in exec session.
That's okay.
No problem.
I mean, I do just have a comment, a concern is that I am concerned that the ERI reports were submitted into the district, and that some of the information was shared with the architect, which, I mean, I understand the logic of that so that it could be incorporated with the bid. I do have concerns that the board did not have that information prior to these discussions or during these discussions. So I just need to go on record saying that is a concern that I have. I do have questions about other items. Would you like me to wait?
I think we could list them out and then address them all at once. Makes sense.
Okay, so the 13.2. So this is related to the reduction in state aid. And I guess my question is, we had budgeted $404,000 for repair and maintenance, and now we're going to have zero in the budget. We're eliminating that entire line item, is what it looks like. So that's a little concerning. And then 13.3, it may be that I'm tired. Are we providing meals to the Yale School West? Is that what the contract is, or are they a vendor to us? That's it.
No, we have a very healthy maintenance budget. This is a reduction just in some areas that, as I had listed, a couple of projects, some of the costs for those projects were in those lines. So no, we have a very healthy maintenance budget, and I do not anticipate that eliminating that amount will affect our maintenance budget at all. We have a long-standing, in fact, it predates me, long-standing relationship with Yale School West in Ellisburg. We provide meals for them. And so this is just our annual approval of that arrangement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, I'll go move on. Mr. Goodwin, did you have any questions?
Yes, I have a question for, I think probably more for Mrs. Sugars. So as far as the award for the bid for the vestibule, I just want to understand, if we say yes to that, does that put it all in danger, or do you feel like we won't be able to do all the work that we may need to do when it comes to the ERI report, or is it because it keeps on being presented as an either or, and I just want to understand, is this really an either or? Either we do this, or we go with the vestibule, or we go with ADA, or can we handle as a district to do it all?
Absolutely, absolutely not an either or situation at all. We've been saying that all along. I think we can absolutely move ahead with the back vestibule and still address ADA concerns. I anticipate that, that'll be a plan that we start working on right away. We will prioritize it. We have $500,000 set aside already in the capital reserve account. We have a few projects in the capital reserve account that we haven't started to move on yet. If we wanted to reallocate some of that funding towards ADA, we can certainly do that, but there's no reason for us to not do the BEC project in lieu of ADA accommodations. I am fully confident that we can come up with a plan to address both issues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Mr. Ovadia?
No questions for me. Thank you.
Mrs. Tom?
No questions for me, Ms. Laurie. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Matlack?
Thank you. I had a question similar to Mr. Goodwin's about, whether or not these were mutually exclusive. And I believe, Mrs. Sugars, you answered that question. So I have no other questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't think that I have questions per se, other than I do believe that we should be moving forward with a full vision of what the projects look like, a full understanding of where we are with ADA throughout the district, what needs to be done, rather than moving forward with these one-off projects. I think we should understand that. I think we need to, in parallel to what we're doing for the bond and so forth, I think that's a big item for me. And that's all that I have. Was there anyone else? Did I miss anyone? Because I can't see. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Schultz.
No, I just have a couple questions. So in lieu of some of the things we've talked about, I think this went circled around and around. So I kind of want to maybe sum it up and make sure we're maybe all thinking about this. Ms. Sugars, do you have just a rough idea of how much money we've already put into the back vestibule project, that if we don't move forward, where the district would be out? Because there's already cost associated with this project. So, because we've got cost associated with the work that's already gone into this at this point. Do we have a rough idea of what that number might be?
Yeah, I mean, I would say at this point, we've paid mainly professional fees for the design of the project, for putting the project out to bid. We've paid fees to ERI to assist in, the site work component of that bid process. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. I would probably say we're at least $100,000 in at this point in terms of what we paid in terms of design and things of that nature.
Okay, so we're about 100,000 vested in this one particular project. If we pull this back today, just so I'm clear too, we've killed it. We would not be able to go back out to bid, or we wouldn't get it at these prices again. We would go back out to bid. So then this potential project and any potential future projects, we then could potentially face that reputation of that we bid and we pull back.
Well, I mean, I think that, that's something to consider. My concern has been the fact that the bidder, the successful bidder, is a contractor that we're currently working with. They're doing the east wall work over at East High School. We have a very good relationship with them. We've been very pleased with their work. And so, I would like to be able to move. I know that the project is in good hands, and I would like to be able to move forward.
And then can we I'd like to get I think we had talked about this before, but if we move forward with this encompasses a large amount of ADA work within BEC. Can you beyond just the entranceway, right? Am I correct?
Yes. I mean, it's not just a vestibule. It is a complete reconfiguration of the main office area. As we have been talking about, a lot of our buildings don't have the main office right near the vestibule. Right now, if you walk into that building, on the other side of where the vestibule would go is actually a small group instruction room. And then you have offices, principal and assistant principal offices, and then you have the main office. So it's really a reconfiguration of putting the main office near the front entrance, and then create some of those other spaces behind that. It will encompass all of the site work in front of the building, to the right side of the building that needs to be done. It will encompass all the ADA work for those projects. It will encompass ADA work within the building in terms of ADA accessible bathroom facilities, everything else that goes along with turning radiuses and door widths and all those kinds of things. So yes, quite a bit of ADA work will be addressed through the project.
Okay, so we're getting the ADA. Okay, that was the one piece I wasn't clear on before, is it does cover the bathrooms as well. So we're getting the ADA bathrooms.
Within that space, yes.
In that space, right. Okay. So then I guess my other question as well is, and then we're also checking off the box for BEC, the security suite, which was also a recommendation from our safety and security committee that was made up of our community members, because that was a recommendation that Lisa had reported out. I don't know if anybody else is on that committee, but I think that was a recommendation as well.
It absolutely was a recommendation of that committee, yes.
So I guess we just have so much invested in this from a money perspective, from everything we're checking off. I don't know why we wouldn't scrap the Man and the Barton vestibule projects where we don't have money invested and move forward with this and start from scratch on the Barton and the Man vestibules. That is, I think, the one thing I think if we could have some discussion on, I would love to hear other people's perspectives on moving forward with this and scrapping the Barton and the Man projects, because we have a lot invested here. And if you lay it out and you look at it, I think
I have a question.
All of that, and when you understand what we could potentially put on the line, I think we're just we're putting it's a risky move. That's how I look at it from a cost risk analysis. I think it's a risky move when we have a lot of money tied up in a Barton and a Man vestibule that we could scrap, and we could use that money when we have a thoughtful plan.
So, okay, so wait, because that's either a discussion or a motion to do something with those projects, but I want to back up to something Mrs. Sugar said regarding money ERI invested in assisting with the bid. So we've paid monies to ERI for their help with the bid process before we got the reports from ERI, because the bid predated us receiving the report. So I want to understand we're out money with ERI for that, separate of the report they provided us for the review they did of the schools.
Correct, because if you recall, the scope of the site work that's to be done at BEC goes far beyond what the scope of the accessibility work was. So there's a tremendous amount of site work that will be done at BEC that includes the ADA accessibility piece, but also includes other portions such as raising drains and curbing and other paving that's going to be done that goes beyond the scope of just what the accessibility piece of work was done at BEC. So yes, ERI, we didn't contract directly with ERI, but ERI was hired through our previous architect when we did bond referendum prep. They have been through all of these sites. They did a tremendous amount of work when we were prepping for the bond referendum to advise the architect at that time on what that work should look like. So it made sense to work with them again. They also work with the township, so we felt it was a good fit to have kind of that collaborative effort. But it made sense to work with ERI on this project, expanding the scope so that we could address the ADA issues, but in addition, other site issues as well.
Just a follow-up question though, that's not uncommon in the bid process, is my understanding. When we put all projects out to bid, there's cost incurred with bidding and scoping out projects.
Absolutely.
Like that's not
my question.
I was asking for myself, Lori, for clarification for me. I just wanted to make sure I understood that properly.
Yes.
Like that's why I wanted to clarify, like if we walk away from this, we're how much money is the district? We're walking away from a project that if we revisit it, we're going to pay out another $100,000 when we come back to this project. So I am not saying that the information we received in the ERI report is not warranted or merited or deserves our full attention. I'm saying that I think we should scrap Barton and Man vestibules until we have a thoughtful plan in place now that we have that information, before we talk about throwing $100,000 invested in a project out the window.
I would also like to make one clarifying point.
Sure.
Again, I just said that, these two projects really, they're not interrelated. They're not, they're interrelated in the sense that, yes, there's ADA accessibility work to be done at BEC and that will be done, but these were two paths that we were on. The one path of getting the accessibility reports done and the other path of getting the BEC work spec'd for a board approved project that we felt confident moving ahead with. So to have ERI assist with that was just a natural progression of getting those specs done. And I don't know that we need to scrap per se that project. I think that we could hold off on acting on that project until we have an idea of if we want to look at a bigger scope in terms of ADA, we can hold off on that project for now. And if we want to reallocate some of those funds, if we pick a piece of the work to do, we can, and the it's bigger in scope than the money we already have set aside, we can pull money from other projects and address it towards that project as well. So it wouldn't be a matter necessarily of saying we're not going to do this. It would be a matter of saying we're going to take some of these funds from over here and move it over here.
Left pocket, right pocket to incorporate the ADA work.
Correct.
Okay. No, fair enough. I think, yeah. Thank you.
Mr.
Lori, I'm
Avadia?
sorry. It looks like Ben has a question.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of talk about how I see it a little bit, just because it does seem like a confusing set of related issues. So we know from 2 years ago that we have about $250 million worth of work to get our district where we want it to be. But I suspect that if we wanted to be state of the art, if we wanted to start considering new construction, we'd be closer to $500 million. That's the number for me that's troubling. So essentially what we're saying is, look, Garrison, who's our architect of record, in about 3 months can get their hands around the $500 million and put those projects in priority. Now, if they do that, and this Beck project is at the top of the list, is one thing. But if we commit the dollars now, money's money. If we commit those dollars and we find out that other studies that we've put together, that HVAC, that roofs, if we look at 100 priorities and this was 35, and we don't have that 1.2, let's call it 1.1 now, because there's a delta available, that's not gonna feel right. And so our experts are saying, look, give us time to get our hands around priority. I've heard that from ERI and Garrison, and if we also have New Road perhaps to consider. But to me, we're so close to having the full picture. Once we have that full picture, it's so easy to prioritize. But what we're saying essentially is, look, we've got 2 projects we can repurpose once we have that information. My point today is, why not make it 3? We can use the 100,000 design to go out again. That is not lost money. But if we move today, knowing there is, let's say, for the sake of argument, $500 million of work to be done, we lose that ability to prioritize the 1.2. So in one sense, that's certainly something I'm thinking about today. The timing, we're so close to being able to really get our hands around. And, today we also know we're headed into the most uncertain year, in many ways we've ever been. So it's not that nothing's changed over this course of time. And for me, I would want those degrees of freedom.
Well, I think I think that you have, significant money set aside in the capital reserve account that you could reallocate. But I think to Dr. Malash's point earlier, and to a comment that was made by Mr. Green, even if we came up with a plan and we prioritize the plan and we start to put the bid specs together and we start to talk about putting these projects out to bid, this is not something that's going to happen by November, December. Even if we have an assessment done by October, this is still something that's going to take time to grasp, the magnitude of what is going on district-wide. 1.7 square feet of school buildings. We have an annual budget process. I see this more being something that either we reallocate funds that we have set aside more as a, to kind of tuck money away, given our uncertain financial situation. I see it more as, as we're budgeting for next year, when we go in and we select what kind of capital reserve projects we would want to do, that we would, maybe pick and choose what we want to do from that standpoint and use it as a tool as we're developing our budget for the following school year. I don't know that even if we took all of these funds and set them aside, that we are anywhere close to getting through, looking at it, prioritizing it, developing specs for it, putting those specs out to bid. I just don't see where we would even be able to spend that much money in that time frame. And again, we're going to have to balance some of these decisions with other needs in the district. Security has been a priority for this board. We felt that it was important to put a vestibule in one of the middle schools. We haven't done a middle school yet. We have the high schools done. We have some of the elementary schools done. Again, I will go back to, I am fully confident that we can be good stewards, that we can develop 2 parallel paths where we continue with a project that we have already committed to and board approved, and still develop a plan to address ADA issues moving forward. I have full confidence that we can still do both projects and manage the funds to do that work.
What happens if we do not use the money in the capital reserve fund by the end of the fiscal year?
The money that we have set aside into projects sits there. It doesn't go away, doesn't go anywhere.
Okay, thank you.
We can reallocate additional funds as we go into the new budget year, but if we don't use those funds, they sit there.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
And I did want to just reiterate the fact that as a board, we did make the decision that security was one of the primary things that we were focused on. And this work at Beck is in line with the plan that we had set out from a while ago, that we were going to really go through each one of our schools and make sure we set up the most secure situation we could for each one of our schools. And so I don't believe that this is a piecemeal thing. This is something that we had a specific plan, and we asked administration to figure out how we're going to make sure our schools are secure. And this is one of those steps along the way to really help make sure that we provide the best we can for our students, especially related to security. But also, I'm glad that we could also incorporate all the ADA work in there as well. So I don't see this as something that we're just piecemeal. I believe that there's been a thoughtful process here, and I don't think we should. Well, I just think we should move forward because we have asked administration to give us those recommendations on how do we move forward from a security standpoint, but also now with ADA. And I believe if both of those are being incorporated in the project, I don't see why we would want to hold back.
If I may also add to Mr. Goodwin's point about security, and I believe Mrs. Schultz made this point as well. The Safety and Security Committee, I was one of the board members along with Mrs. Seidel that sat on that community committee. It was the ad hoc committee that was recommended by the community, asked for a committee in response to their desire to have a more direct input into these discussions. So the ad hoc Safety and Security Committee was formed, and it was one of their recommendations. When we move forward with the recommendations from administrators or our professionals, or advice from committees that give us input, you know, we take each of those into consideration. There has been a lot of discussion around this. There has also been some negativity around this, but we all here because we give our time and our energy because we care about the children in this district and our community. You know, and when Mrs. Sugars said that she believes that this work is not mutually exclusive with the very important ADA work that we need to get done in the district, says to me that we can work together moving forward and combine these ADA work and security work as we move forward. Have invested a lot in this BEC project with the full board approval to go ahead for this. And I understand that people now have questions, and we can take the other projects, as Mrs. Schultz said, that we have earmarked funds for, and discuss how are we going to move forward with them. I feel that neither of these, moving forward with the ADA work and moving forward with the security work, I don't believe they're mutually exclusive, and I think that we can do them together.
Mrs. Sugars, how much the Barton and the Man, how much did they total together? I just off the top of my head.
1.8
Each or total?
total.
So that's 1.8, and the ERI was the whole total of that report? The cost
report for the ERI accessibility?
Yeah.
It's 160,000.
No, I thought it was like 2 point.
I'm sorry, I thought you meant to pay the.
About 2 point.
Yes, it was about 2.8. Remember also, we have $5 million set aside for bond development.
Right.
Which is another area that we could look at.
That we could reallocate.
If we wanted to reallocate.
So 1.8 and another 5. So we have $6.8 million that we could reallocate. Is that, so again, I want to go back to that. We have $6.8 million that we can reallocate against an ERI report of 2.8, and we've already paid out $100,000 on a project. So I would like to maybe just hear thoughts from maybe all the board members to understand, again, why we wouldn't move forward on this project, knowing we can reallocate and have very healthy discussion on a number of 6.8 that could be reallocated.
All right, so let me move it around to each of the board members and see what their thoughts are. If we go ahead and reallocate those monies and have that conversation in proceeding with BEC, that we're not allocating those monies to those other projects, and we then indeed take that bigger picture view.
Yeah,
Mrs. Friedel, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's definitely something that we could consider, but I still have some concerns about some of the things that occurred during this process.
So if I may, can I understand what those concerns are so that we can maybe understand?
Sure.
Because we're talking about, just because Ms. Friedel, we're talking about tabling a project that a lot of resources have gone into. So I just would love to understand what those are.
So like I mentioned a few minutes ago, the district had possession of the ERI report. It had possession of what was going on at BEC. That information was not shared with the board. However, it was shared with the architect, and therefore it was shared with the bidders. And, you know, perhaps had we had that information, it would have been a conversation that we had several months ago, as opposed to today or 2 weeks ago when we're being asked to move forward on this project.
Okay, I understand that, Mrs. Friedel, but now when we know that we have 6.8 that we can reallocate, and we have a good project that does encompass all of ADA, I guess I would ask you to just maybe think about that, because we are accomplishing a lot with this project. So I do think that's a valid concern, but we do have $6.8 million that can reallocate, and we're talking about tabling a project that could move the district forward and make enhancements to our school. So thank you.
Mr. Ovadia, your thoughts?
Yeah, okay. So the first round didn't. So the thing is, I mean, I think, I don't know, maybe I'm the only person that thinks about, I really think we're going to need a bond. And I think the district has allocated hundreds of millions of dollars of projects that need to happen. You know, when we were there, it wasn't like hey, you know, this would be really nice. It's, you know, I remember Dr. Malash saying so many times, there are projects that need to happen. So to me, I think this has become like an ADA or vestibule discussion, which I believe is the wrong discussion. I mean, I think ADA has to be done. I think in our plan, the Beck vestibule also has to be done. The question for us is, when we come up on some projects, we do not have the wherewithal to do them. I'll give an example, the Rosa vestibule, right? We know that that project most likely will have to go into a bond. So the idea that from a safety security perspective, we need these vestibules immediately, to me, you know, and then look, there's also a conversation they had with equality and equity, and I'm sure there are better experts than I am at the board, on the board side of this, but you know, we have to think about, look, what does a priority mean? In other words, an HVAC system. We've talked about it when we've talked about it in the full board. Is like, look, we can't afford that without a bond. However, you know, passing a bond, you know, will be, you know, I believe an art and a science that may be 3 years away. And so, if we hit a place in, let's say, March, where we have identified these priority lists. I agree with Ms. Sugarbush, by the way. It won't happen in October. We'll have a first pass. We'll have something to look at and discuss. But to me, it's all about gearing up for summer 2021, where we'll still be, in my mind, 2 years away from bond, but we'll have a bit of a war chest of money. And it could be that there are roofs that absolutely need attention, or HVAC that absolutely needs to be done. ADA on the priority list. The thing is, we're looking also at ADA monolithically, as if to say, well, the Beck ADA is covered. Yes, but we know from the experts that Beck ADA is not the most priority ADA of the 19 buildings footprint, right? We know that from their own, you know, presentations. So to me, it's degrees of freedom. I don't see the 100,000 as lost, but you know, I would aim for degrees of freedom. You know, the idea that we're not going to have you know, $300 million of projects we want to do a year from now, you know, I believe we'll be there. And so, you know, $1.2 million, what's the big? Yeah, because it's a chunk of that. And that could be a project or half a project that we absolutely must be done. So that's my thinking about it.
Well, actually, Ben, just to clarify, because I really appreciate that perspective, but the 6.8 does not encompass that 1.2. The 6.8 is money that can be reallocated. The 1.2 is already accounted for. So I just wanted to clarify that 6.8 is money that we can reallocate towards ADA and future project. That 1.2 we've already moved over for this project. So I only wanted to clarify in case other people thought that too. But I guess my only thought, and I really appreciate your perspective because I really feel the same way too, Ben. I really do. That's why I think there's a lot of merit in having the conversation about future projects. But we can future project this district to death. And then we're going to be at a stalemate because we're either waiting on a bond pass or we're talking about future projects or encompassing. So at some point, we've got to pull the trigger on projects, is just my opinion. Because you even said it yourself just now, we don't believe that anything's going to get tabled up until March of 2021. And we have a project ready to go that just checks the box on so many of our goals. And I agree with what Ms. Matlack said. We're all here to better the district for 11,000 students. And we have an opportunity sitting in front of us to do that. And we still have $6.8 million left to reallocate for ADA and future projects. So I totally agree with you, Ben. I really do. But I think I'm just trying to kind of put that perspective out there for us as board members and for our community members to look at it from that viewpoint, because I think part of our role and responsibility as a board member is to keep projects moving forward for our students because our buildings need it. But thank you.
So I think for me, my struggle is I would have liked to have had this conversation, you know, a month, 2 months ago, prior to having generated the bids, where I feel that now my back is being forced proverbially against a wall to, you know, vote for this, or we're out money that we didn't have to be out had we had this conversation prior. So, you know, my apologies if my frustration is apparent, because that is not the position I would want anyone to be in, or my other colleagues on the board, and to now feel like that's where we are. So that is my frustration that I have to grapple with. So I'll leave it to Mr. Goodwin or Mrs. Matlack if they have anything else on this. Or Mrs. Tong, I apologize.
Actually, Laura, I appreciate your frustration. I think we've all been there. I just want to say thank you for your comments. I truly do. I think we are all there, but if I could, I really just want to go back to, we all can say shoulda, coulda, wouldas on how this conversation should have taken flight. I think we could all probably agree on that, but thank you, and I appreciate your perspective.
Mrs. Schultz, I
Yes.
just want to add too that I think that had we not been in the situation we were in, I think that affected when we received the reports. You know, timing is everything. You know, so I think that affected when we received the final reports. I think that, again, we were moving ahead with a project that was board approved, that we felt confident in moving forward with, that, again, there's two parallel paths. You know, I also think that, honestly, I don't think that the reports were necessarily a surprise in terms of, we knew there were issues. We knew that there were things that we were going to have to address. And this was one of the components that we were going to use to put our plan together to address them. You know, we talked about this last May. You know, we kind of laid out, okay, this is what we're going to do. These are the steps we're going to take. We're going to have this study done. And then we're going to use that information, and we will prioritize, we will come up with a plan, we will start to address these issues. You know, it's a lot of things that we have to look at. There are a lot of facilities issues. I agree with Mr. Abadi in that, you know, we have this much work to do and we have this much resources right now. The only way we will ever fully address all of the things that we need to address is through some other type of funding, which is more than likely going to be a bond referendum. But I think that we have to be able to move forward, even if with smaller projects, to get work done, to keep us moving in the right direction. We've made a commitment to finish out, also through the capital reserve, finish out all of the cameras, finish out all of the swipe card access. We are implementing all of those security measures within the buildings. And so we're moving ahead with that project. We'll be, you know, hopefully moving ahead with this project as well. Again, I go back to, this was a step that we were taking in order to develop a bigger plan. And again, that timing is everything, but you know, I am confident that we can move ahead with both projects and that we can come up with, move ahead with our commitment to security and move ahead with our commitment to addressing the ADA work at the same time.
Schultz, just, and again, I appreciate the discussions as well, and just want to reiterate, you know, so it's August of 2020, so we're about 20 months after the referendum failed, and we're a full more than 21 years since the last referendum in Cherry Hill was adopted. For a variety of reasons, during the course of those last 21 years, there's been a lot of inertia that has set in. The projects, many of them that we identified for the 2018 bond referendum, still exist. You know, we need to look, we need to move, we need to progress. I think that there's a responsibility that we have administratively, there's a responsibility that the board has, and the commitment of what we're doing to the community to be fiscally responsible, to be aware of where the money is that we are spending, where it's coming from and where it's going. And I think we need to do the projects that are going to benefit the school district overall. And sometimes that's a challenge to identify what that is and at what time. A lot has gone into this project. There's been a commitment from the sitting board. This did not involve transition of board members over an election, but the sitting board made multiple commitments to this. And doing the work allows us to progress in security, allows us to progress in ADA, allows us to progress in addressing some of the needs that are so critical across the district. We've identified there, again, I believe the board was incredibly fiscally prudent to listen to the recommendations, to protect that money as we went into the summer. There's a significant amount of money that's there to address additional projects should the determination be made that they can be done this year. Again, everything that's in the ERI report cannot be done during the course of this academic year for a variety of reasons. But again, that full picture, by the time we talk to Garrison, when they give the initial report out late in October. We go through the discussions. We're going to be after the first of the year, and planning, as Ben said, you said, Mr. Avadia, about the summer, right? We've been responsible to continue to do projects during the summer. We know there are projects that have to keep moving, that have to keep going. We will continue to do that. But I don't think that not doing this project is going to benefit the district at all. I don't think it's going to benefit us in terms of the work. It certainly is not going to move us any farther ahead in terms of ADA accessibility in any of our properties.
I have some logistical questions.
Go ahead.
So,
I don't.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, number one, materials are hard to come by these days. So, even if this is approved, is the bidder that gets awarded this contract going to be able to actually do the work? Are they going to have the materials to do the actual work? That's one question. Another question is, how many people are going to be displaced from the front office? I asked a question last time, but as I pondered it, and I was told one classroom will be used for the office staff, but I'm thinking you're going to have a principal, secretaries. Is the nurses suite in the front office? Is that being displaced? So how much space are we taking from the front office and moving people into? And then what does that do to the classroom spaces at back as we are reducing class sizes with the accommodations for reopening? And Beck, I believe, is one of the schools that has a lot of rooms that don't have windows. So if those rooms aren't fully ventilated, are we going to be able to be serving our children and our staff safely, in the event that schools reopen, to accommodate this work? So they're just logistical questions I have.
Yeah, we have worked with the school. They have designated a classroom that is right near the other entrance, which is on the other side, that they will use as their pseudo main office until the work is done. We worked with them and allowed them to choose where they put it. I'm not aware of any, if there is a classroom that does not have windows by facilities regulations, it's required to have HVAC in it. I'm not aware of any rooms that are interior rooms that don't have windows, that don't have access to HVAC. So I'm not concerned about that. But yeah, we worked with the school. They're very confident that they can make accommodations. Again, this project is supposed to be done in December. So you would be talking, from September to December, and then hopefully everyone would be back in their places by January.
Okay, and the materials?
So all I can tell you is that we know that doors will be a long lead item, and that's something that if we had approved the project in July, that's something they would have jumped on right away and ordered. I can tell you that in working with this contractor, we have not had issues at East. They've been able to receive all their materials that they have needed for that project. So yes, I think there may be some items that may be delayed, but I'm not concerned about an overall delay in the project because they won't be able to receive materials in time. Doors have been a consistent problem. We knew that going in.
Thank you.
Was there anything else?
Well, Lori, did we want to give Eric and Carol and Lori an opportunity to speak? They haven't had a chance yet.
Yes, no, absolutely. I asked them that previously before.
Yeah, you did ask, Lori, and I think I spoke earlier. I'm just in favor of moving forward. My main concern was this a either or situation, and I have clear understanding from what's been stated that this is an either or when it comes to are we choosing between this and ADA, and I just didn't want to. I thought that was a bad position to be put in because I would never want to do anything like that. And since this is not an either or, I'm confident administration to move forward.
Ms. Matlack?
Yeah, Laura, you did give me an opportunity to speak earlier. Thank you. And you did ask if we wanted to speak again. I don't have anything additional to offer. You know, I believe from my comments, it's clear. You know, I had a concern, like Eric did, about whether these two ADA work, security work, were mutually exclusive with this project. I've been assured that they're not. I like the idea of moving forward once we, you know, continuing with this project, incorporating the ADA work, is the economy of scale I believe that we need going forward. And I think that we can I want to have us to have those discussions about the, you know, possibly reallocating money in that regard. When we have those discussions, you know, ADA and security work, you know, won't be mutually exclusive, and that was a concern. As Ben stated, you know, we are going to need to go for a bond, but even knowing that, we can't count on that, and we can't plan for that. We have to have two paths, one that we know we need that, and the other path happening at the same time of the work that needs to be done. Dr. Malash pointed out that in the past, there's been a lot of inertia when it comes to getting projects done in the district. And our current administrative team has been very good at helping us move forward to keep things moving forward. That doesn't mean that our capital reserves, our capital project budget is going to ever be enough to cover everything that needs to be done. But it also doesn't mean that we need to only look forward to getting those projects done with what we have, or only look forward to getting projects done with a referendum. To be fiscally responsible, we have to consider both, and we have to consider everything all at the same time. I think moving ahead with this project starts us off with a good footing, with continuing our security work and incorporating a lot of the ADA work that was recommended for back. And it gives us a direction for discussion moving forward of how we can continue those, while at the same time we're also planning for the bigger ticket items that we may need to get through with a bond. Again, nothing is mutually exclusive in any of this, and so that's how I'd like to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tong, did you have anything else? I don't believe I got back around to you.
That's okay. I do have a question. That $100,000 that we, or close to $100,000 that we spent out to the ER and a couple things, what is that we cannot be able to use if we were to go back in the near future to say, okay, now we're ready for bed, whatever, what we're going to do now? What is it that we cannot use out of the $100,000? I know Ruth had mentioned that $100,000 would be giving, like, pretty much just, if we don't do this, the $100,000 will be lost. I don't know if that's the case, but what's your input, Mr. Sugar? Can you let me know? Is that $100,000? If we don't do this back vestibule, how much is really not be able to use in the next round if we go up for the bid or for the work again?
You would be able to use this. I mean, the specifications would have to be updated for new timelines, for, you know, any adjustments that we would make in the project. So you would spend additional fees in adjusting the specifications. If you went out at a different time, you know, I don't know that there would be significant costs if you postpone the bid. Now, if you postpone it for a year, there may be. If you postpone it a couple months, I think, you know, yeah, you could probably still use the specs. You'd have to do some updating to them. But I think then, part of the appeal of doing the project when we were doing it was we were going to start out the school year with the new main entrance, or the temporary main entrance set up before the school year started. Everybody would use that entrance, and then over winter break, we could take all that down and then start using the new vestibule. So in terms of timing, this was a good time of year to do that project, to get that work done. We could get some of the work done. Had we approved this in July, we could have gotten a jump on it in August and gotten some of that work done. So in terms of when we're doing it, I think it's the ideal time to do the project. In terms of the money we've already spent, yeah, there would be additional fees with updating various things, updating timelines, going through the bid process again.
Okay, but thank you.
Mr. That just made me think of one question though. If we postpone this, we have to go out to rebid. It does not guarantee we will get this at the same price.
No.
So we also could send this back out to bid and it could be higher the second time around.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a little difficult because now there's sort of been people have seen the market for the bid. People have seen the numbers that were put out. So would you even have the same bidders would be another question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other comments, Mrs. Sugars, do we want to move it around as we did before? If there are any other no's or abstentions?
Sure. So I will open the online voting, and then I will go through the list. Ms. Friedel, any abstention or no votes?
I'm going to remain no to 13.4.
Mr. Goodwin?
I don't have any. I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Matlack?
I have no abstentions, thank you.
Mrs. Neary?
No to 13.4.
Mr. Avadia?
No to 13.4, yes to the balance.
Mrs. Schultz?
I need to abstain on the bill list to Henry Schein, please. Thank you.
Mrs. Tom?
I have to no to 13.4. Everything else is yes. Thank you.
Okay, on to human resources. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following: 14.1, termination of employment certificated. 14.2, termination of employment non-certificated. 14.3, appointments certificated. 14.4, appointments non-certificated. 14.5 is action to consent to approve human resource agenda. Do I have a second? I'll go to Mrs. Schultz in Mrs. Seidel's absence.
I second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move to questions. Mrs. Tong, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, Ms. Lori. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Matlack, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Goodwin?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Friedel?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ovadia?
No questions. I did just want to commend administration. I know one of the things we tried to do was to, or one of the initiatives was to bring robotics into the curricular world, and I see that on 14.3, and so that's great to see. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mrs. Schultz, do you have any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Sugars?
Open the online voting.
Okay. Next is policy and legislation. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. 15.1, resolution to approve settlement agreements. Do I have a second, Ms. Friedel?
I second.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move for questions. Mr. Ovadia?
None, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Goodwin?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Friedel?
No questions, thank you.
Mrs. Matlack?
No questions, thank you.
Mrs. Tong?
No questions, thank you.
Mrs. Schultz?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Sugars?
The online voting is open.
Okay, and I do not believe there are any items this evening for strategic planning.
No items.
Okay, great. Okay, so that brings us to the second public comment. Mrs. Sugars?
Mindy Rose in 6 Fairhaven Court. I listened to the meeting last Monday. Many of you asked the legal questions, but sadly your attorney did not answer you in public. You saw a slide presented by Lynn Sugar stating that all 19 schools are accessible and none are not accessible. This statement was attributed to environmental resources. I know that you were all in receipt of a letter from Rakesh of ERI saying that he could not make that statement because ERI was not contracted to inspect the doors. As Lynn explained that slide, and seriously, what would that even have to do with the vote tonight? You are in violation of the law. The district is not in compliance. Whether or not a person can or can't walk through the front door has nothing to do with the fact that the district now knows it is breaking the law. The board is on notice that they are not in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. There are no more excuses that can be made. Tonight you all get to vote on the law. Do you want to comply with the law or continue breaking it with the full knowledge that all 19 schools are not compliant on the outside of the buildings? And I am sure when Garrison does an inspection of the doors, classrooms, bathrooms, APRs, etc., they will tell you about more violations that need to be addressed. The administration and BOE has been kicking the can down the road for 30 years. Now is the time to show that we value following the law. Now is the time to show commitment to inclusion and equality. Now is the time to lead by example. If you vote tonight to spend over $1 million for one vestibule, you are telling us that you value one school over 19. You are telling us that a canopy is more important than a curb cut. You are telling us that you all think it's okay to break the law. Benjamin Shore, 12 Manor House Court. My comment is the following. Currently, we put armed police officers in our children's schools. These officers are immune to liability under Section 1983, which prohibits individuals pursuing them for acting under the color of law. I think private security with high standards are a better choice as they are personally liable under law. Additionally, the police have instilled fear among our young community, and I believe our children demand a safe learning environment free from armed police, immune under immune from liability under Section 1983. Deontay Hanna, 12 Manor Court. My question is, as a Black man, I have seen parliamentary officers respond to peaceful student protests at the Cherry Hill Mall, for example. The line of military-styled officers that met the peaceful protests were scary. Can we please consider withdrawing any and all armed police from our schools for our children and community? I also love the social justice high school requirement. Let's get local organizations involved in this too. At Rise Against Hate, we are happy to work together. Jamie Goodwin, 112 Mansfield Boulevard. As I am sure we are all aware now, in late May, many of us witnessed the televised murder of a Black man gasping, "I can't breathe," while an officer sat with his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds until this man's heart stopped beating. This incident was enough to incite people across the entire world to fight and demand that Black lives matter and must matter. But also, more importantly, this murder forced many of us to think more carefully about the pertinence and maintenance of whiteness in our language, institutions, and policies that all helped to build a system that took thousands of protesters to convict men of a televised murder. I am a Black woman and previous Cherry Hill School District student with a current sibling in Cherry Hill Schools. I reach out as a concerned community member concerning the language used in the outlining of the recently read goals for this academic year. One comment that was mentioned a few times by a few members is that these goals, as they were written, were already laid out by several committee members, and therefore we should not change them now. However, I worry this kind of logic doesn't seem to keep in the foresight the children who these goals hope to serve. If we know that marginalized children, especially Black and brown children, are continuing to be harmed in the Cherry Hill schools by the language and framing of these problems from the initial drafting of the goals in January, why would we hesitate to update these goals? I want to share one particular concern around the language in the first goal about closing achievement gaps. In this goal, it states, continue to improve student achievement at all grade levels for all students and decrease achievement gaps where they exist. As many are now coming to grips with this in Cultural Proficiency Committee, is that use of the term achievement gaps is laden with racism. This term shifts the attention and burden of the continued gap in opportunities given to Black and brown students by teachers and administrators to an apparent deficiency in achievement in a particular student. It distracts from specific ways that are, for example, teachers systematically recommend these students are lower level classes because of the stereotypes around Black intelligence, or how Black students by population in Cherry Hill schools are 300% more likely to be suspended, therefore missing valuable class time. So now we think that about the goal number one, it appears that the strategies to improve academic scores is not really about race or racism, but about individual students' achievement, and therefore we could create strategies to better motivate all students or increase academic standards. We would solve the racialized disparity as it manifests in academic scoring. Although this concept was not new, it is now clearly understood by several members in our community and committees, and so if we failed to change this language, we would be agreeing to further harm Black and brown students by not properly addressing how opportunities for academic success are being actively stolen from them. This is just one of several examples I won't bore you with now where language used in the formulation of these goals prior to many people within our administration, awakening to prevalence and maintenance of racism institutionalized in our language and policy can cause serious harm to our students now. Racism is not just a bad moral concept, it has drastic negative consequences on the futures of Cherry Hill students so that some will never truly have access to colleges or futures of their choice. Miriam Stern, 121 Ashford Road. What are the platforms the district has made available for teachers to use for virtual and remote learning? I've been hearing about other districts providing teachers with multiple apps and platforms beyond Zoom and Google Classroom to support their efforts to provide effective learning opportunities. Also, what devices, technology will the teachers be using to live stream classes? Since the Strategic Planning Committee hasn't been meeting, can you please provide an update on any efforts to follow the recommendations of the Alternative Funding Committee? As a participant in that committee, we gave several recommendations to move forward with pursuing alternative funding. Given the 2.4 million funding cut that we got from the state, the need to pursue alternative funding seems critical now. One recommendation we made was to hire a full-time grant writer. A grant writer could do what so many other districts are doing, applying for grants to have monies for much needed programs, such as those to address anti-racism trainings and resources or programs to help close the opportunity gaps, as the district follow through on hiring a grant writer. And that's it. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one more. Excuse me, it's one that I missed. Grace Dorn, 47 Bryn Mawr Avenue. As someone who is protected under the ADA, I am appalled that there have been so many things out of compliance for so long. The things in the ERI report are only one piece of the problem. They do not look at the doors or many areas inside the buildings. As an alumni of the Cherry Hill School District, I have seen with my own eyes sections of the schools that are not compliant and therefore do not give students with disabilities access to an equal education and educational experience. When Mrs. Seidel says she needs to look out at all 11,000 students, but seems willing to allow the district to postpone becoming compliant, she's clearly only looking after the able-bodied students. We need to consider those with physical disabilities, chronic health problems, and temporary injuries. We also need to consider their parents being able to access our buildings to support and advocate for our children. As a district of character, this should not even be a debate. Bring our district into full compliance with ADA. Now that's it.
Okay, thank you. Turn it over to Dr. Malash if he wanted to comment on any of those.
Let's see what was printed. Don't really have anything to add to any of them this evening, but I am appreciative for the comments.
Okay, great, thank you. Did we have any items for second executive session this evening?
No, but I'm going to ask Mr. Green, because the motion to award the bids that have been solicited was voted down. I believe, Mr. Green, that the board has to take action to abandon the bids.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. Yes, we've created an ambiguity because we have not adopted the resolution to award the bids, but we really need to take action to affirmatively reject them under the local public contracts law, public school contracts law. So what I am respectfully requesting is that the board adopt the resolution to reject all of the bids under item 13.4 pursuant to NJSA 18A:18A-22. Hold on one second. C, because for the reason that the Board of Education wishes to abandon the project.
Is that something we just do as a vote now?
Right, exactly. We just take a vote on that now because at this point, I don't think it's realistic to think that this is going to come back up again at the next meeting. It seems to me that the project has been killed. So unless we're going to bring it up again next time, I think the appropriate action right now is to vote to specifically reject it. Therefore, you're fitting within the statutory framework. You're not leaving any legal loopholes or ambiguities open.
Okay, then I would turn it to Mrs. Sugar to take roll call on that.
We need a motion and a second.
Need a motion and a second.
Motion. Okay, I'm not going to be able to remember to say all of what you just said.
That's okay.
Paul, but
just said move what the attorney just said.
I make a motion to move exactly what Mr. Green just said.
Second.
Thank you. Mrs. Sugars?
Mrs. Friedel?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack?
No.
Mrs. Neary?
Yes.
Mr. Avadia?
Yes.
Mrs. Schultz? No. Mrs. Tom?
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary.
Okay, no problem.
And then, Mrs. Neary, we do not have any items for a second executive session tonight.
Okay. then seeing there's nothing else, I would make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Wait, sorry, one sec. Weren't we talking, wasn't the second session of the board goals today? Or no?
No.
We moved, that's why we invited Judy Wilson with us
Okay,
to go through that discussion.
gotcha. Okay, sorry.
No problem. And I don't think that would be executive session anyway.
Yeah, it would be public, correct. We did that at the beginning, that first hour of the meeting.
I second.
I was just about to say something. Okay, thank you. Then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good night, guys, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Right.